Hello, welcome everyone. Salam, adab, namaste, and welcome to today's event, Rights, Responsibilities, and Vulnerabilities of Minorities in Democracy. And we have three speakers. The panel is Professor Mohibul Haque from Political Science Department of Aligarh Muslim University, and Shazia Ilmi Sahaba, who is Vice President of BJP Delhi Unit, as well as National Spokesperson of BJP, and she was also a founding member of Aam Aadmi Party. And Teesta Setalvad, who is a very well-known human rights and civil rights activist in India. She hardly needs any further recognition or introduction. So let's move from here to the spiritual song, which will be finished in 4 minutes. And after that, we'll invite Ms. Shazia Ilmi.
अल्लाह तेरो नाम ईश्वर तेरो नाम अल्लाह तेरो नाम ईश्वर तेरो नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान
Yes, come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Preeti, so much. This was Preeti, one of the activists here, in Washington, D.C. area. She is a poet and comes from Kerala. She's a nurse by profession. So now it's our pleasure to invite Shazia Ilmi, who doesn't have much time. So that's why we have modified our format. So you please give us a brief 7 to 8 minutes of your talk, and then I will raise some questions for the audience. Okay. So go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. And I really apologize for this. It's just that it's just been a very hectic phase. And I'm at the Jaipur Lit Fest where I had to steal time and come here. And then I have to do a couple of, I'm still working and I have to briefing to do with the Uttarakhand team later at 10 o'clock. So thank you so much for inviting me. And Preeti, by the way, that was beautiful. I think the rights and responsibilities and vulnerabilities of Muslims, as the topic goes, I think a lot has been said about it, but I must express my disagreement at the outset at this topic, because after 75 years of having gained independence, that we still seek our identity, members of my community. And I'm from Kanpur. I'm daughter of a Maulana. Deoband Seminary gave the title, this khitab of Ilmi to Abba. And that's where I come from, Kanpur, Chamanganj, which was completely a Muslim, predominantly Muslim area. That I still, after 75 years, of independence, that we still see our identity as that of minority and see ourselves as that is to me is disagreeable to me, because I really feel, and and not that since I've been a child I have been treated as an equal. There have been instances when people have told me many times that why didn't you go to Pakistan? I remember being a little girl standing at an ice cream vendor in St. Mary's Convent, Kanpur, and young girls coming to me and saying, "Tum log to Mohammedan ho na?" And I'd say, "I don't know Mohammedan kya hote hain. Hum log to Muslim log hain." Because I didn't know what Mohammedan was, and then I was told by my elder brother that Mohammedan is just Mohammedan mispronounced.
Sorry, I muted.
Okay.
Go ahead,
please.
Okay, so Mohammedan is just misspelled. Mohammedan is mispronounced, and Mohammedan, it's actually so it's Mohammedan is just, everybody say Mohammedan. So but for every slight that I endured, there were always those who also who gave me not just adequate love, but also I was more than an equal. So yes, and I think everybody, whether it was my friend Ruchi Jain, who was always teased for being a Jain. Then there was my friend Garima, who still gets teased because she says, "Oh, you're a Banya." So there were always these divisions, and I think there was something very cruel about us as a people. तुम बंगाली लोग ऐसे होते हैं, तुम पारसी लोग तो ऐसे, बाबा लोग तो इतने होते हैं. There is just something which was very primitive about the way we spoke of the other and how quickly we were to otherize. And even amongst Muslims, how we were with Shias and Sunnis and Deobandis, and वहाँ पे मच्छर हैं, वहाँ पे खटमल हैं. So while we were so ready to homogenize and see ourselves as Muslims, when it came to the BJP or the RSS or the Sangh, so to speak, we would never want to look at the sectarianism within. And I was always I always like to think for myself. I always wanted to kind of wanted to challenge what everybody else was saying. And I thought about it, and I realized that I'm not going to subject myself to any kind of hatred and be just be spewing hatred against anybody, whether it's an organization. I'm going to be rational and I'm going to think for myself. So this is who I am as a person. So yes, where my rights go, and it's not that we have not been vulnerable. There were times and far before. So while, there is ever since our Prime Minister Modi ji has um, held to the office, and ever so strongly, people seems that there was no idea of otherizing or the identity of that of community before that. But we all know where we come from. We all know the history of our country. We know about the grave sins of partition. We all know what has happened. We all know the various riots that have happened. And as somebody who lived in Kanpur and UP, I was all too aware. As a daughter of an editor and a publisher, Shazia Ilmi Sahab, who we had a Urdu newspaper, Siyasat Jadeed, as a youngest daughter and a little kid in the house where the news was coming out, I was well aware of the fact that that there was there was rioting going on at all times, and Modi ji was not even a figment of anybody's imagination. I mean, I got to know actually about the so-called how evil the RSS is much more from the mass communication school I went to. So I think it existed more in the minds of the academics much later when I did my master's, not much earlier, because my mamus and khalas never spoke about it so as much as others did, So it was that Sanghi Soch, which random creep up, and that was it. But I know what the first case which was slammed against my own father was by Nehru ji, and when he spoke for the Prophet, and it was on this book called Rangila Rasool. So and my father felt that it was very unfair. So I don't know what we talk about. It seems that we've forgotten history and we need to revisit it. And how easily this nomenclature of my party for Muslims, so it is very secular. Your party is not for Muslims, it's for Hindus, so it is communal. I think it is the most dumbing down of your brain, and most numbing down of your intellectualism that can ever happen to anybody. And it's the easiest thing to use when you don't want to deliver, when you allow a particular family or corruption to prevail. And as you all know, I left my career of that of a news anchor, and I was very good at the job when Anna Hazare Andolan happened. And I just felt I have to do something more. And will I, as a Muslim, only talk about communalism, secularism, or will I talk about other things? Will I talk about governance? Will I talk about transparency? Will I talk about basic rights that affect everything else? Or will I just talk about being a Muslim, and my identity? There is so much more to me. Don't Muslim families deserve great roads, great services? Don't they benefit from a basic toilet? I mean, doesn't a Muslim woman need the same thing as a Hindu woman does? Ahirs, Jats, Kurmis, Swarans, and the Dalits, don't the very poor need the very same thing? So I was so shocked that, and I was absolutely disgusted by the so-called secularism of the Congress party. And I know, because I lived in a Muslim area for the longest period. Excuse me.
Faisal, what happened?
She is off camera.
But off camera, but we cannot hear also, right? So she's
Yeah,
off.
maybe somebody came and she has to attend maybe.
Yeah, she's there.
Yeah.
But actually, she is not online.
No, she is here.
I don't see her.
She's
Yes.
there.
Rafat,
I'm there.
we see.
I'm there. Can you hear me? So sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
So, and also, so yeah, there are rights, but there are also rights of an individual within the community. There's also a right of a Muslim woman within the Muslim community. There are also rights of liberals in a Muslim community. There is also a right, just like there is a right to wear a hijab, there is also a right not to wear a hijab and not be judged. There's also a right of, let's say, I mean, I know what happened to a professor in Aligarh because he was gay. And so there are individual rights also. Rights are never absolute. And so just using your identity for politicization and politics and tom-tomming it almost and to espouse the most regressive practices, which are not even there in other Muslim countries. Just like when we had to fight on triple talaq, for instance, it is not even a part of Quran, but so-called secular parties, whether it's the famous Shah Bano case. I mean, this secular party, which Congress calls itself and other parties too, actually went against the Supreme Court judgment, which just gave a poor Muslim woman, Shah Bano, who was well in her 80s, first 130 or 40 rupees and then 500 rupees for maintenance. वो इस्लाम खतरे में आ जाता था. इस्लाम क्यों खतरे में आएगा? Why would Islam be so small-minded? So I think just, we have the worst kind of politics has happened in our country in the name of Islam. And the very mentality which led to partition has been allowed to rear its ugly head, which is exactly what has been happening. And at that point of time, by succumbing to this, whether it's the Shah Bano case, and now we saw what happened with triple talaq, and as recent as this conversation on hijab. So, it's hilarious that the so-called secularists and people who dare to call themselves liberals, actually go out of the way to keep women cloistered and secluded and say, oh, it is their right. They would not want this for their daughters. They would not want this for themselves, but they're out there. So just to oppose the BJP, you are ready to throw Muslim girls under a bus. So I don't know what on earth the secularism is. But if this is your idea of secularism, I mean, I do not want to practice this. Thank you very much.
It was quite brief, and obviously we wanted to hear more from you. So let me, because you are short of time, we had some question about it. Okay, so
Sure.
You put your case that for you. This was what was practiced was pseudo-secularism. The BJP is practicing probably a real secularism or doesn't discriminate. But don't you see that every day in India, activists from BJP, all fronts, whether sadhus or from secular fronts or from normal fronts, all different outfits, continuously charge on a certain community, us Muslims. They question about their belonging here, their loyalty here, or their equal rights as a citizen. Don't you see that? Genocide or one day hijab. Why they have to question? Why they don't question on tilak? Why they don't question on tika or sindoor? Why they question others?
Can I answer?
Like that? Yes. So
I don't know where you, no, I think you're totally misinformed. I don't know where this word genocide has come from. I mean, I'm sure there is some leftist fake secularist who is sending some weird manufactured WhatsApp from the imagination of his mind. There have been no communal rights in the very history of India for the very first time. If you see the communal writing that has happened in India for the very first time in the last 7 years, and I hate to make it so ugly and as cliched as that, because when you say us, you talk about Muslims, obviously, but for me, us is a much bigger number. But if I just want to think of myself as a Muslim, let me tell you, the least number of Muslims have been killed on the watch of the so-called, not secular party. So
True.
BJP does not tomb secularism, but in terms of giving anything half decent to anybody, whether it's your basic, so it's one thing to just keep running the propaganda machine.
All right.
Muslims are very vulnerable. Muslims ke saath ye ho sakta hai. And not doing anything for them and just living and sucking the blood out of them and using them as vote banks. For the very first time, Muslims and the poorest of them, the poor ones, I'm not talking about the rich ones who have the luxury of the ideology, so to speak, and they can do whatever.
I understand, but you see, when you say that there are no riots happening,
show me any information.
Okay.
Show me, no BJP activist. No BJP activist, no BJP minister, no BJP office bearer has ever spoken anything against any Muslim whatsoever.
That is surprising in the sense that...
No, if you can quote any fact to me, I mean, in your imagination, if things are happening, then, in my imagination...
Hold on. Let me just ask questions, okay? You can answer whatever you want to say. You said that there is no...
I can only answer to facts, sir. I can't...
of course, that's fact to you. I understand. That's fact to you. This is a terror in the sense that whether it happens through riots or through lynching. This is the first time in our country.
Exactly. Lynching. Do you know how many Hindus have been lynched? Do you know how many Dalits have been lynched? Do you know the Sikh lynchings? Do you know the Nelli and all the massacres? And do you know what has happened in each state? Do you know? Do you know that there is why would you attribute it to the BJP? Lynching just because those three names were made into a propaganda machinery. How does it become a BJP issue? They were done at the time of Akhilesh Yadav. What has BJP to do with it? So partition happened. No, I'm asking you. Partition happened in a country. So you would say that happened because of BJP?
No, not at all.
Jallianwala happened. No, Jallianwala happened. Was that because of BJP? You can blame BJP for everything. I mean,
no, we are not. No, please.
Akhilesh Yadav. No, I'm asking you a very logical question. Lynchings happened. So if you read the news, if you care, because if people have taken out and it's terrible that anybody has been lynched. But do you know what speedy trials have happened? Do you know that Ashok Gehlot's regime, Junaid, the Muslim man who was lynched, do you know that though there was a confession from the killers, from Junaid's family and Junaid, and also the killers of Junaid, do you know Ashok Gehlot, who is from Congress party and the Congress CM, do you know they're out on bail? But you know something, there was no follow-up. The WhatsApp University forgot to tell you that. Because you know why? They wanted to tell you that Modi is evil. This is happening. And do you know in Clark's case, do you know that those people are behind the bars? So if you don't care to read the news and follow up and read the same old leftist people who are actually working and who are political activists, then it's too much. You have to know the news. And that's what I'm saying, it's facts. You have to know the facts.
I understand.
Junaid was killed. But similarly, you have to know about...
I understand your point.
How many... No, you have to allow me to speak. If you don't know your facts, you're talking about Junaid, Clark and Pehlu. I can talk about Ankit and Dev and Chandan. Muslims have killed Chandan. But is there a thing that, that Muslims are killing Hindus? What if that starts? Do you know what will do to ordinary Muslims?
So
have you read the statistics on that? Do you know in Dalit and Muslim areas, how many Dalits have gotten killed? But will you ever find a reportage of that in your WhatsApp University? You will not, because this goes against the propaganda. So I'm thinking I can only answer to the facts, right? I can't answer to...
Yeah, first let me clarify it. Most of the audience here is quite educated people. They are very much knowledgeable about political scenario about India. And they are not just...
Yet they did not know that Ashok Gehlot's government let off the killers of Junaid.
Yeah.
Yet they did not know that. Did people know that? I want to ask them.
I'm asking you a simple question. that
Let the question
No,
ask.
Teesta, you have been called out so many times. You indulge in perjury.
But I think
You
why
use
don't you
Zaira
just
Sheikh.
listen to a
Why
No,
is
no,
it
no,
a
no,
all
let's-
the political
why don't you
activists
listen to a
yourself?
let's not fight. Let's not fight on this.
You are the
Yeah,
biggest
no,
victim
she's
of a
ignorant to
WhatsApp
my time. No,
university.
Teesta, we all know about you. So,
No,
No, no, please,
Hang
please,
on,
please.
Yeah.
Ms. Shazia, I think it would be appropriate because you have asked for only 30 minutes. So I think you
So
need to
don't
be
let's
No,
not
Teesta
follow.
intervene in my
and give
time.
moderator
It is
some
only
time.
appropriate that I answer.
No, no,
So
no,
let
please.
moderator ask a question.
Yeah, she intervened in my time.
Listen, but listen, the problem is you are.
You know, that's the
detailing
reason
it.
why I don't want to attend these forum. You know, there's a very good
But
reason.
you are
You all
not
do your own
listening
thing.
also.
I'm
But
very
you are-
happy not to be a part of it.
No, no, but you are also not listening. You are
Shazia ji,
just
this is,
saying.
hold on,
you are-
Razi bhai.
No,
This
no,
is
no.
not a political forum.
Yeah, yeah.
This is an
Of course it
intellectual
is political.
discussion.
Of
No,
course
it
it
is
is
not.
political. Did you
No,
hear
no,
the
it is
questions?
not.
Of course it is political.
It is
So
an
you are
intellectual
just
discussion.
fighting.
You
Please,
don't want to
please
listen to
bear
any
with us.
facts. You don't want to listen to
No,
what
these are
Muslims
not
have thought.
facts.
I mean,
These are
आपको ये
not
बोलना है
facts.
कि this
No,
is
no,
a
no, no.
narrative.
This
I
is
mean,
a
Muslims are getting
propaganda. You
lynched
are.
and you're saying it's not
Listen.
political. Come on.
You are-
क्या बात आप लोग जानना ही नहीं चाहते आप लोग इसी में
तो
रहिए
आप
बहुत
भी तो
मुबारक
सुनना
हो
नहीं
आपको
चाहती।
आप इसी में रहिए
नहीं तो
बहुत
आप भी-
भव्य मुसलमान जेनोसाइड हो रही
अरे
है
भाई,
सब मुसलमानों को मारा जा रहा है बिल्कुल सही कह
अरे
रहे हैं
तो
आप
आप
इसी में
भी तो
रहिए
जानना नहीं
बी वेरी
चाहते
हैप्पी
तो
आप
क्यों
भी
बुला
सुनना नहीं
प्लीज
चाहती।
थैंक यू वेरी मच यू आर
So-
सो राइट ऑल द मुस्लिम्स इन इंडिया आर बीइंग किल्ड
So are
you
you
if you want
right?
to believe this it's true
So
thank you
are
very
you
much
right about it? Are you right about it? What you're saying? So this is how it happens. So you can see that
But
she was.
this is Razi bhai designed that way that you just speak. Don't let the other person talk
I
about
understand.
it.
I understand. Please let me say this thing. This was, she agreed to come, but then suddenly she changed the discourse that she is in a hurry. So she wanted to just say all these things and she will not listen to anything. She will not take any genuine questions. She just put the propaganda machine in full swing. This is how they operate and you can see it. So based on that, we have to have now a real evaluation that it works for a public a lot and it has delivered them. So Teesta ji, aap please आइए मैदान में और please give your talk and then we raise some questions to you and later on to Mohib. Okay, आप अपने को unmute कर लें please. Yes. Thank you.
How much time do we have, sir? 7 minutes, 8 minutes?
10 minutes, you can talk 10 minutes.
Great,
You
great,
can
yeah.
brief about
I first
everything,
want to express my gratitude to Raziuddin Saab and the entire forum for organizing this very important discussion. And I also want to apologize. I actually held myself back till the very end. But what I felt was not proper was not being able to allow the question to be put at all. Otherwise, nobody was interrupting Shazia ji. But anyway, let's carry on. I just want to divide what I want to say in the on the basis of 5 or 6 heads. One is the question of economic and social security. The other one is political representation. The other one, and finally, the whole issue is democracy and dissent. And within these 3 parameters, I'd like to say that unfortunately, we are at the crossroads just now, the rights, responsibilities, and vulnerabilities of the minorities. I think no seasoned democracy, no mature democracy, particularly a democracy that would like to call itself a power in the world, a third, a large economic power, political power, military power, can even begin to exist without actually acknowledging that we are a very plural society in India, and that pluralism and diversity means we have to recognize what pluralism and the rights that have been given under our constitution. I'd also like to stress that when we talk about the word minorities, we don't always mean only religious minorities. There are also linguistic minorities, there are gender minorities, there are minorities within the religious and gender minorities. And I think it's very, very important that the minorities also understand these various dimensions of the word minority, because I think that's when real pluralism and diversity and a diverse discourse and intersectionality between women, gender, Dalit, Pasmanda, Muslim, Christian, all of this comes in. So that is my first proposition. I think that there can be no question that the social and economic security of minorities is a grave issue today. It's a grave issue for many reasons, and I think many of them are historical. we need to also keep referring back to something called the Secy Committee report of 2005 and 2006. And it is true that even earlier dispensations did not really pay the kind of attention they should to the whole issue of the economic and social and political rights of minorities. And they negotiated, in fact, with a largely, and I think this is important, they negotiated with a largely religious and extremely conservative male Muslim leadership, male Christian leadership, and not actually try to engage with the community itself cross-sectionally. As a result of which the representation that you saw was not necessarily one that talked about democracy, talked about professionalism, talked about rights. And what emerged was, even when the Secy Committee came out, a politics of patronage rather than a politics of rights. And I think it's very important that the minority community be looked at, whether it's a religious minority, ethnic, linguistic, or gender, in terms of the language of rights which are granted to us under the Constitution, directive principles, etc. So I think it's very important to understand that there is a whole issue of the social and economic insecurity that minorities face. And I think one would also, I like to place on the table, at least I would like to place on the table, that despite the fact that till 2014, we had a series of governments, we had a blip in 1999 to 2004, which were broadly democratic and committed to constitutional values. The difference between the current dispensation and the one we had in 1999 to 2004, which was fortunately a minority government, was that inherently the ideology that it was fundamentally based on, I believe that the BJP is a parliamentary wing of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, was actually fundamentally anti-constitutional and anti-democratic. So when you have an ideology operating actually against the constitutional values of equality and non-discrimination, an ideology which has one of its books or two of its books which believes in second-class citizenship, which believes that the internal enemies of quote-unquote the dream Hindu Rashtra, the Hindu nation, are Muslims and Christians and communists, which means dissenters, then I think many things come into play. Then you have, say, the Sadhvi sitting in the Ministry of the Government of India. You have Sangeet Som, you have Balyan, you have Yati Narsinganand, who are kind of using positions of power to spout actually very hate-filled and violent ideologies, which are talking about exterminating people, etc. And I think, therefore, the difference between this dispensation, which is also in power in many, many states, I think 15 or 16 states, is what is very, very worrying for Indian democracy as a whole and for our minorities. So I think we need to argue that the social, economic, and political security of minorities is under really and particular threat today, though historically there has been a denial, as the Secy Committee report has shown, and Amitabh Kundu's report, which is a follow-up to Secy, has shown that not enough policy initiatives, not enough affirmative action has been taken to reduce this gap of social and economic denial. So for instance, the Secy Committee pointed out, and so did the Amitabh Kundu report, that what we need actually is an equal opportunities law. What you need is adequate incentives for microfinance, MSMEs, and representation. You find the kind of ghettos under which minority, particularly Muslims, are forced to live, are denied things like basic civic amenities compared to other areas, and very much like some of the Dalit areas. So you're finding this very institutionalized discrimination at work. The other issue is political representation, and I think it's a very important issue. It's something that the progressive, secular, liberal, left forces have, I think, not given adequate importance to, whether it's the Dalit issue, Dalit representation, or Muslim women, or Christian, or gender minority. I think the issue of political representation is a very crucial one for any democracy, and we need to look at it very, very closely. So that's the other issue. I also would like to mention that there is a very big challenge for the minorities in this country, Christian or Muslim particularly, which is addressing the intersectionalities within the community. And I've always said this, that I don't want to fight in elections, so I will mention uncomfortable things. But unless the Muslim community itself is able to tolerate dissenting voices, gender voices, who are challenging certain patriarchal and community norms within the community, and they must have a space. They are both Muslim and they are women. They are both Muslim and they are dissenters. They are both Muslim and they are non-believers. And they're looking at secular democracy in a way that maybe a very, very conservative, archaic religious clergy does not. And therefore, I think that is a challenge for the minority, to be able to deal with that dissenting voice within the community, which is saying that please have a certain attitude towards secular democracy, which is more forward-looking and more involving in the secularism and secularization process. So I think this is a challenge, and this is a challenge which is not spoken about enough. And I believe that one of the things that the Secy committee did not do was look at the question of the security. And I've had the misfortune of looking at least 28 or 29 Riot Commission reports since 1961, Jabalpur. And you find institutionalized discrimination, you find bias in the police force, etc. But we also find that there are voices emerging from the largest religious minority, Muslims, and the Christian community, which is challenging some of the patriarchal and undemocratic notions that is spewed by the leaderships of those communities. And those need to be strengthened, those need to be supported, because these communities are not hegemonic at all. So whether it is a triple talaq issue, it's a very important thing that Shazia brought up, but of course in a typically perverted way. The whole triple talaq issue, the polygamy issue, the issue of halala, these issues have been flagged by secular democratic groups within the Muslim community, women within the Muslim community, and saying that saying that these are not Islamic practices, they are perversions which have been brought into the Indian Muslim community, where the Indian religious clergy is not condemning them. So therefore, we need to take a stand about them because they are oppressing our own women. Obviously, we oppose criminalization of triple talaq, where the Muslim man is criminalized. But I think because not enough steps were taken, you have a BJP, an extremely rapacious, aggressive, proto-fascist power, then taking the advantage and enacting the law. So I think these are challenges, real challenges we have. And I need to also say for a few minutes that, particularly because of the kind of things Ms. Ilmi said, which was so problematic, that just look at the climate in our country post-2014. It's of course we know what happened in 1984 because she never mentioned the Sikh community in Delhi. Of course we know about Delhi. We know about my city, Bombay, 92-93. We know Gujarat, 1969 before 2002. And we know that the governments in power did not take adequate stands to punish the perpetrators or to take steps against institutionalized killings and discrimination. But Gujarat 2002 onwards took it to another level, complete another level. And this kind of, societal and institutionalized violence and the hate speech that we have seen being espoused from those in positions of power from the day the present Prime Minister took office, and the silence of the political leadership of the country when hate crimes take place is something that we need to take note of. We cannot not speak about that. And I think just since the day before yesterday, when we saw the victory in Uttar Pradesh, which has disturbed many of us all over again, we know that the bulldozer is today the metaphor for the victory. And, it is very convenient for the Chief Minister of the state to say we're talking about bulldozers against only one particular community's mafia. But anybody who knows Uttar Pradesh, and we work on the ground there, we work in Purvanchal, we have a team there, knows it was used particularly to threaten Muslim bastis and Muslim neighborhoods. We know what happened in 2017 when this party came to power in the state after several years, and the entire community of meat cutters and meat makers, I don't know if viewers were butchered as a particular connotation, were brutalized. We know the terror and intimidation that the community is living under. And therefore, I would like to offer some hope, though the victory has not been there. I'd like to say, and Mohib Saab and I, we've been talking every other day on WhatsApp, that while it is true that there's not been a victory for the secular parties, 80 seats up for the Samajwadi Party and a narrow loss in 60. Most importantly, 11 hate mongers, particularly from Western UP, and even the most atrocious one called Raghavendra Pratap Singh in Domariaganj have lost. Saida Khatun has won there. Many Muslim candidates have won under RLD and SP tickets. We have a representation of 36 Muslims in the Vidhan Sabha now under the present government. And it's going to be a huge challenge. The repression is going to increase. Already you have FIRs against protesters who have protested the lack of the election commission's impartial monitoring of the elections, and the repression will continue. So there's a huge challenge for us to kind of be able to respond to the crisis that faces the Indian Muslim community today. The Indian Christian community also. The Evangelist Fellowship has accounted for 300 attacks on the Christians last year. if you look at Assam and we look at the 19 lakh people who have been excluded from the NRC, another 2.2 lakhs have been excluded as D-voters and are called declared foreigners. So we're talking about 2.2 million, 22 lakh people who are living under the shadow of being called non-Indians. Not all are Muslim. Only about 27% are Muslim. The rest are Santalis, Rajbanshis, Hindi speakers, etc. So of course, the political target of this kind of policy is the Muslim community. Constant patriotism tests are placed, etc. But eventually, when policies play out, the migrant labor, the working class, the OBC, the Dalit, the tribal, the Adivasi, all comes under attack. So I think the real challenge for us is to constantly forge these multiple identities and build these multiple alliances so that there is not this hegemonizing sense that only one minority is being attacked. I think this country, just like many other countries of the world, saw a huge tragedy last year when the COVID deaths took place, and those have been undercounted. Families have gone through huge distress. We are facing economic job losses and huge inflation. Growth is not happening because there's a wrong kind of growth, which is crony capitalism, which is missing. And this is affecting, of course, across the board, all Indians, but of course, it's affecting those sections among the minorities who are under the social and economic levels, and a large section of them are. So it's a huge challenge. The responsibilities, I would like to say, there's a huge responsibility on the Indian majority community to build programs for social cohesion and inclusion. And I think it's also a responsibility of the Muslim minority, Christian minority, Sikh minority, Adivasis, Dalits, to also move towards, by protecting their own rights and demanding their own share in the sun, also to build social programs of social cohesion. I'm open to answer any questions. I hope I'm not taking too much time. Thank you.
No, you have not taken much time. Actually, we wanted to hear more, but can you, because the format today was a little different, so I have to raise some questions for all, but later on the audience will also ask some questions.
Sure.
The prime problem is you have just seen one speaker saying all that. So, but there is a perception built on that ground. So how the Muslim community can really defend its association with secular parties when they become the target. And when they become the target, the secular parties really do not come to their defense that aggressively. So it is real problematic. They don't want to go to BJP because unlike the Shiv Sena alliance with the secularists, BJP is unwilling to do anything, any kind of gesture. So Muslims are bound to go to Congress or secular parties. But when they are bound to go to that, the reverse, the other side, who is getting their votes, is not coming very aggressively to protect them or to stand with them. So how this can be played and for how long? And in that scenario, out of frustration and all those things that come into play, what Muslims should really do at this juncture?
Actually, it's a very, very good question. And it's something that I've been grappling with for the last several years, but particularly over the last 3 days, because I've been talking, I've had at least 26 Zoom calls across with activists and friends in Uttar Pradesh, many of them, 80% of them Muslim community leaders and people we work with very closely. And the same question is coming up that, you know, if there is 88% of the Indian of the UP Muslim has voted for the Samajwadi Party this time. We know that Akhilesh ji unfortunately did not become very active vis-a-vis the election till 4 months before. There were so many issues that the UP Musliman faced since 2017. Loss of livelihood, attacks, the CA protesters, false cases, demonization, hate speech. Where was Samajwadi Party at that time? It was a very valid question that they kept raising. And the feeling also that if we are not, if we don't articulate this openly to the Samajwadi Party leadership, then what will happen there is really scary. It's like what happened in Gujarat. I watched Gujarat very closely. I know Gujarat since 1986, apart from the fact that my ancestors come from there, is that Muslim community has stopped voting. They have withdrawn. Not many of them can bring themselves to vote for the BJP Some do, but I don't blame them at all. But the point is that many of them are just withdrawn from the process. And that is like, it's the success of the far right, which wants to invisibilize and completely marginalize the Muslim community in every way. So it is a frightening prospect. It is a very scary prospect. So I was just telling them, because many of the local level leadership, the MLAs who have won, the Muslim woman who has won, I said the civil society, people like us, activists, need to work with the political opposition and put pressure on them that you cannot afford to be silent. We can, because we are not ever going to take over the political role, but we need to push them that you need to form social justice cells, you need to form minority cells, you need to form women's cells, and you need to have a constant active voice. You know, when we say proto-fascism, sir, when we say majoritarianism, this is what it does. It silences even the progressive forces from taking a stand. I mean, we saw, for instance, the kind of the language that the Congress and all started using when they should be, I mean, nobody wanted them to defend the regressive leadership among Muslims, but they could have taken a hard secular stand in Gujarat, nationally, etc. And if they had done so, I believe majority of Muslims would have supported them, because I work very closely with the Muslim community. They don't want support for one Maulana or one silly statement. No, they want support for their economic rights and dignity. If that is supported, they will manage their religious affairs on their own. They're not interested in any state, this thing. But this whole image that has been created, that the Muslim wants this, the Muslim wants prayer, the Muslim wants namaz, the Muslim wants kalka, is also a creation of how secular parties have dealt with a leadership which is not progressive, not modern thinking, not professors, not doctors, not activists, but they prefer to go to the religious leadership and the madrasa. So it's a difficult time we are living through, but I think we all have a role. And as activists on the ground, I think we cannot abdicate our role of putting pressure on the political opposition that it cannot be afford to be silent. Okay, it also needs to fight the election commission. I mean, the mockery that the institutions have become. Election commission is not taking independent stands. The opposition says a few things at the time of elections and then doesn't take the battle forward. So there's a lot of discomfort with the cadres. At least pick up 7, 8, 10 powerful cases and fight those cases out. You have the resources, you take them to court. Even if you win some of those cases, you'll be able to jolt the commission into some sort of response. But non-engagement is not the answer.
So last question for you, Teesta ji, is all those civil rights activists like you, Harshmander, Sandeep Pandey and others, why they couldn't come together for having a hate crime legal cell to protect minorities and especially Muslims when you
I don't think that's fair, sir. Some of us have come together. I don't think that's fair. I think some of us are doing it in the sense that we may not be doing it under one platform, but in different areas, we are doing it. Like we are doing it in 5 districts. It's very difficult without resources to do it in all the districts of UP. But we have started a cell in 5 districts. We are doing it in 12 districts of Assam. We are doing citizenship work. In 4 districts of Maharashtra, we have started. A lot of it is a question of resources. Even Harsh's group is doing it in some other districts. And we try and coordinate at one level. The point is that groups are doing the extent that they can, but there's been an attack. There's an attack by the state. The kind of thing that Ms. Ilmi was saying to me has been alleged in the media. We were the first victims of this government making all sorts of malicious allegations. Now Harshmander is an attack. So you have to face that and you have to continue your work. It's not easy, but many of us have stayed the course and we are still doing it. CJP, my organization, if you just look at our website, we've expanded by leaps and bounds. Incrementally, we have expanded. I mean, our Assam program is unique. Nobody else is doing this kind of work. So the point is, we need to build a nationwide, district-wise legal aid thing, but it takes resources, it takes strength. We have sworn never to take FCRA now. We are raising our money only domestically. So all these are very, very big challenges for us,
Well, you were the target number 1 for the FCRA.
Yeah.
So no doubt. So let me now invite Professor Mohibul as Haque, and after his mini talk is over, then few questions will be raised for him, and then we will be open for audience. Okay, thank you very much. And Dr. Mohib, please.
Thank you, Radhi bhai. First of all, my sincere apologies to Teesta Setalvad for what was said in the session. Teesta is one of the most credible voices in the country against injustice and violation of human rights. And she is basically the symbol of resistance and dissent in our country. So Teesta, you should not get hurt. We know that the people try to silence you on many occasions, but you are doing a wonderful work and we all acknowledge that. First of all, you see that I am reminded of Winston Churchill, who said that democracy is the worst form of government, except all other forms that have been tried from time to time. When we see the development of democracy, first of all, you see that there were three reactionary institutions during the Dark Age in Europe. That was the papacy, and then the monarchy, and then the feudal lords. So these three institutions were responsible for stifling the voices of the people. There was no space for general masses. So under those circumstances, you see the democratic movement that was built up thanks to Renaissance, then Reformation, then Enlightenment. And this is the reason that you will find most of the theories, they say that democracy is an Enlightenment project. But what has happened, you see that the first thing that we find in a democratic project is that there is a trust or faith in the rationality of man. Then man is a rational creature, or he or she can know what is good and what is bad for him or her. And nobody should be there to tell people, so long as they are not harming others, that what to do and what not to do. So that is what we call individual freedom become the cardinal, foundational pillar of democracy everywhere. So democracy cannot be visualized without granting what is called individual freedom or the freedom of conscience. But there is one problem with this democratic project. Democracy overemphasizes what we call individual freedom without taking into cognizance the collective rights. So that dichotomy, the conflict between individual rights and collective rights, that is one thing that the liberal democratic project has not been able to resolve. Of course, new theorists like Will Kimlicka and Viku Parekh, they are coming up and they are saying that the issue of multiculturalism is very, very important, especially when we are talking about the diasporas in the different countries of the West. But at the same time, you'll find in democracy there is the principle of non-discrimination and equality that is emphasized. And when we say that principle of the non-discrimination in democracy is equality is something that should be there, it means there cannot be a special safeguards, or there cannot be a special care for the vulnerable groups in the society. And that is problematic for most of the liberal democratic projects in all over the world. Basically, the moment you try to do something that is called, there are people who are unequals. So the equality can be among equals and inequality among unequals. That is the principle of equality that we have to understand. So this is the reason that we will find that who are minority, first of all, we have to understand. And if we see the definition of authority, which have been adopted, of course, by the United Nations, basically, when we say that who is a minority, there are four important factors or the component that we have to take into account. First of all, numerical inferiority. Numerically inferior group will be recognized as a minority. There must be non-dominant position. They must be distinct from the majority. And the last one that is very important, and that is there must be a will to preserve their distinctiveness. What Shazia Ilmi was saying right now, that you see the identity, for example. Identity is something that is, that the separate identity should not be there, homogenization should be there, so this one people, one culture, one nation, that is a very dangerous project that always ends up where that, that is a dangerous project. It becomes fascism. It promotes what is called majoritarianism, where we are trying to make a state a bulldozer. And we are trying to say that the state should bulldoze all identities. And it should make, it should become a melting pot. So ultimately what will happen that, when we are trying to bulldoze all identities, means the distinctiveness that we have, but the diversity that we have, that will not be segregated, that will not be tolerated. Rather, in the name of one nation, one people, one culture, what will happen? That there will be cultural homogenization. No other identities, and that will promote what is called majoritarianism. Keeping in view, the theoretical aspects, the two important thinkers from the liberal democratic project we should take into account. Number one is John Locke, who is of course father of contemporary liberalism. He says that you see that there are three important rights, and they are there. For example, right to life, right to liberty, and right to property. And these rights cannot be taken away by the state. He said that the state comes into existence only for the protection of these three important rights. And if these rights, that is right to life, right to liberty, right to property, that is the state, E-S-T-A-T-E, if that is taken away, it means people have a right to revolt. That is why, he becomes a revolutionary political philosopher. And then John Stuart Mill, who says that it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. It is better to be a Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. And then he is saying that there is always a danger of tyranny of majority in democracy. And that temptation of majority to impose its ideas, its values upon the minority, that is something which is a very dangerous trend. And he is warning that if, tyranny of majority established in democracy, it means that is not a true democracy, that will be a false democracy. Today, we are living in the largest electoral democracy in the world. But the question is, qualitatively, if we are going to judge on the basis of what John Stuart Mill, who is a great liberal political thinker, that whether it is a true democracy or false democracy. This trend is, they are all over the world, the right-wing forces are rising, and ultimately the very rights that have been granted by the democratic society, by the democratic state, those rights are being manipulated to the advantage of the majoritarian ideology. And because of that, what is happening that the minorities are facing all kinds of threats. There is no doubt in it. Minorities are facing threats everywhere. You see, for example, I was going through a data and I find that in the United States of America, the Afro-American community, that is Black community, that, they are 14% in number, but their representation in jail is around 30%. Same is the case in India. The Muslims are around 14%, but their representation in jails in India is 30%. So ultimately, if this kind of thing is happening, in jobs, you will find, for example, the public employment, you will find their number is less, but in the jails, they are higher in number. Again, the other things, we are also talking about the vulnerabilities of minorities, rights of minorities. Now, what are the responsibilities of minorities? I know that the Teesta Setalvad was pointing out that within community there are voices, and these voices of dissent, they should be respected. You cannot justify, for example, a particular political body or a particular religious body from our community, for example, Muslim community, saying that there should not be what we call abolition of child labor, abolition of Child Marriage Act. They are calling for abolition of Child Marriage Act. How can you justify the abolition of, means, what do you want? You want that a 9-year-old girl should marry. She should be allowed to marry because she's a Muslim. So where is that responsibility? That we have to understand. And in the secular space, especially when we are going to interact with others, we have to keep in mind the same project that I started, that the trust in the rationality of man, the trust that every individual, so long as he or she is not harming others, what John Stuart Mill says, other regarding action. In the self-regarding action, she or he should be allowed to do whatever she or he wants. And here comes the justification for what we call the rights of sexual minorities as well. So these are the points that the minority community also has to understand. And last point that I will mention here, especially in the case of the Muslim community, that you will find that the fiqh that was developed in the Muslim society and the fiqh that we are following, the different schools of thought, most of those things developed in the countries where Muslims were living as majority, and they were also ruling. Now, there must be, there are doors of ijma and ijtihad in the community and the qiyas. On the basis of that, the minority jurisprudence, or how a Muslim should live as a minority in a country that is being dominated by other communities. That is also something that should be pondered over by the Muslim community. Razi Bhai will say that you are trying to bring religion into this democratic secular space, but keep in mind that the Muslim society especially cannot be reformed without understanding the normative value of Islam, and that is why I'm trying to invoke this particular point. And lastly, you see that what we should remember that these days there is a fashion that we talk of. This is the last point, Razi Bhai, that we talk of this political party and that political party, that BJP did that and Congress did that. But the point is how a particular state like Indian state is dealing with the minorities. It is not the particular political party. It is not the particular political, it is not the particular group. But what is the responsibility of the state? How a state is dealing with the minority, whether it is 1984 anti-Sikh riot, or whether it is 2002 Gujarat, or whether it is recent Delhi riots. We cannot say that Congress did that and the Samajwadi did that, or Muzaffar at the time of Samajwadi party. The basic question is, where is the responsibility of the state and the apparatuses of the state? Why police, for example, Sri Krishna Commission report, I quote from there, a police inspector is saying that when a helpless woman is calling that I need help, and he says, and I quote from Sri Krishna Commission report, that if a Muslim is killed, one Muslim will be less, unquote. Why this kind of attitude? The most visible manifestation of a state is police, and during the communal riots, it becomes very difficult to get protection from this most visible manifestation. Thank you very much.
Mohib Saab, very well said. But the only one question I am going to raise is what Teesta said, is that we are talking all about the abuse of the government on minorities, but minorities realizing this, that governments have been very abusive and at least not very conducive to their health or interests. Why Muslim community themselves never take any step to improve their educational, their political, their social structure? I mean, take for example, your institution, our Aligarh Muslim University, largest campus in the country, probably the best place housing all the Muslim intellectuals. There is not a single movement coming from Aligarh Muslim University on any educational, social, political activism at all. No articles written from their intellectuals, no mass contacts, nothing. Maybe Jamia has done a little better in that sense, but why there was no effort from the community itself? Unless their majority sees you as active, actively engaged in this process, they will consider you that these guys just want some kind of help and that's it. They themselves are not getting all this, trying to do anything. What is the answer for that?
Okay, Razi Bhai, that's a very good question, but let me first of all make it clear that if you go through the Secy committee report, one thing that you'll find about the Muslim community, and that people hardly highlight, that when all the socio-religious groups that were studied by the Secy committee, it was found that the Muslims, as a socio-religious group, if you see, they are the people, the highest number of self-employed people, they are from the Muslim community. But they are self-employed. Without the help of the state, most of these people are self-employed. Number two, about Aligarh Muslim University, Razi Bhai, you should know that it is among the top 5 universities of India, according to most of the rankings that have been done. Among the top 5 universities of the country, you must know. And
sorry, you got the question totally wrong. I'm not talking about the quality of education at Aligarh Muslim University. I'm not talking about the self. No. I'm talking about, give that answer as a political scientist. What is the rationale about this, that the minority community, knowing very well that the governments have really abused them, why they themselves couldn't rise above this thing and created a space for themselves politically, socially, and otherwise and all that. Don't talk about the number of papers and articles, things. Why,
No,
as a leader, why you couldn't come up? Or any of the institutions, Muslim institutions?
No, Razi bhai, I will say one thing that, when we are talking about Aligarh Muslim University, why we have not been able to. First of all, we should not underestimate the power of the state. One thing that you should, we all must accept this, that discrimination, marginalization, social exclusion, that is something which is very much inherent in the society. Number two, about the Muslim community, when you are talking about why they are so backward, and most of the time people give example of the Sikh community. One thing we must remember, that the baggage of history is there with the Muslim community. They are basically held responsible for partition of the country. The hostility that they face when they are even going for the public, private jobs, and what kind of questions that are asked to the students, those who are going to those spaces. And thirdly, the very power of the state, when that is being, all the practices of the state that is being, used for othering a particular community. Not only othering a particular community, but projecting that community as internal threat. That ideological discourse, if that is developed, you can understand that, it becomes very difficult for a community which is marginalized right from 1857 to 2022, which has been facing all kinds of problems. For example, in post-partition India, you'll find frequent communal riots, thousands of communal riots in this country, where one Muslim, after 2-3 generations, he is struggling and coming up to do something, and after that, one fine morning, he finds he is nowhere. So ultimately, that discrimination, that marginalization, or the social exclusion that has been done systematically, the structural inequality in the society, that should be also understood. At the same time, you see that a kind of revolution you will find in the community. Girls' education especially, you see how Muslim girls are doing so well in education, going to schools and colleges, and you see that they are trying to seek admission, and even the institutions that are not available for them. For example, you see that there are institutions where they should have their own spaces, and the thousands of schools, colleges, and madrasas that the Muslims are running. Keep in mind, it's a downtrodden community in comparison to even scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. So, जब आप social religious groups से study कीजिएगा, तो you have to see comparatively how many institutions have been established by different other communities, and how many institutions, educational institutions, have been established by Muslims in this country. आप देखेंगे chain है, and by that way they have tried to maintain their own identity. They have tried to preserve their own identity. They have tried to preserve their own culture and tradition, and that is something that should be appreciated.
All
So
right. Yeah, we got it. So let's stop
Can I
here.
add something here? Can I just say something here to this question, please? I just
Ji,
like to say something. I fully empathize and agree with what Mohib Saab is saying to a large extent, but I think one thing, Mohib Saab, which we probably ignore as the more privileged sections of society, is the class and caste dimension among Muslims. And I think that, is also responsible for some of the issues that I think Razi Saab was talking about. I think that there is been a kind of a blind eye turned to the entire Pasmanda working class section of Muslims, who are the same people you say who are self-made, who are employed themselves, etc. And I think because of this entire non-recognition of that larger section, a whole lot of creativity and creative ideas have not been able to come to the fore. That is my feeling also. I mean, I just like to humbly suggest that, because some of the institutions we are talking about, of course, they're very admirable. What all they've done, they're very good in terms of academic excellence. But they could have opened the social structures in a more democratic way, which I think maybe has not happened.
Yeah, I think Mohib became very defensive about what we have done. Yes, you have done enough enormous things in India, but really we have to do far more better than that on social reform and activism and all those things. Let's stop here. Faisal, just show the next week's announcement, and then Dr. Rafat Hussain will take over as a moderator for the audience. Okay, Faisal? Are you there? So,
Ji?
Rafat, Faisal, are
Ji,
you
ji.
there?
Uh-huh.
Please just show the announcements for the next week, and then Rafat will do the rest.
8 second. Ji.
Next week, we are going to have a very good combination of scholars, two iconic families coming together. That was an idea given to me from Ashish Tripathi, a senior journalist from Times of India, that we should bring grandchildren and children of Mahatma Gandhi and Netaji together deliberately, because BJP these days are trying to, they are trying to own Netaji, that, he was a dissenter and didn't like the Congress. That was totally untrue. So anyways, Professor Sugata Bose from Harvard, who is a grandnephew, and Professor Anita Puff from Germany, who is a daughter of Netaji, and of course, Professor Rajmohan Gandhi, grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. They are together in coming week, and they will talk about Indian national and Hindu nationalism, lessons from Gandhiji and Netaji. And is another announcement is for tomorrow, which is unrelated. Unrelated in the sense that it is not a regular part of this Indian diaspora. Many people are discussing since a couple of weeks or rather a month on Aligarh Forum about the proposal for establishing a coaching guidance information center. And so everyone is welcome. Same Zoom link, same time tomorrow. Thank you very much. And now over to Dr. Rafat Hussain, who will be moderating this section. Rafat.
Thank you, Rajibai, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Haque. Thank you, Shazia Ilmi and Teesta Setalvad. So it was an interesting day today. And so the session is open for the question and answer. There are a lot of questions in the chat box, but those were most likely they were for Ms. Ilmi. So if you have interest to ask a question to these two speakers, please show your interest in the chat box or raise your digital hand. So let me begin with, okay, so Rudranshu Singh and Tariq Farooqi, because I don't know, these hands were raised long time back, whether they really want to ask the question now. So Rudranshu, please go ahead.
Sir, my question was also for Ms. Shazia Ilmi, but she delivered a monologue and vanished, to my horror. Now my question is to Madam Teesta Setalvad, that you have seen the court cases in Gujarat. Why the BJP goons or the individual who happens to be the Prime Minister of this country wasn't being prosecuted for what was done in 2002? Where was the pitfall?
Well, I can only say, Rudranshu, that it was not for want of trying. I don't know if you have any idea about the kind of battle that the CJP has put up. Apart from fighting the 68 cases of the individual trials, we pursued what we call is the mother of all cases, which is the Zakia Jafri and CJP case. And between October 5 and December 10, 2021, just 2 months ago, there were everyday final arguments for 5 hours a day made in the Supreme Court, just simply to urge that the kind of evidence collected by us as a citizens group backing Zakia Appa are enough to have a charge sheet against major perpetrators. So the effort has been made sincerely at great human cost to us and to our organization. The lacunae is in the system. I mean, if you have a system which is tottering, if you have a definition of democracy, which is just an electoral democracy and does not take the constitutionalism seriously, then even the Election Commission and the judiciary are targets. And there is a certain reluctance in our country, political and judicial, to actually prosecute powerful perpetrators. Look at the history of, say, the 1984 anti-Sikh pogrom. Look at the Nelly massacre. Even today, the victims of the Nelly massacre in Assam, which nobody talks about. 18th of February, 1983, 2,500 Muslims slaughtered in 5 hours, and at least 5,000 over the period of 4 days. Bengali speaking, very poor working class Muslims and other minorities, largely Muslim. There were no prosecutions. We've not had prosecutions for major targeted crimes in this country because there is an institutional reluctance to prosecute. The state is a prosecutor in this country, and we fought very hard in the Gujarat cases to get victims and complainants to also prosecute cases. So we managed a small amendment in the criminal law so today victims can also take perpetrators to court. But it's an uphill battle, tardiness of the courts, delay in cases, lack of independence of investigation, lack of independence of prosecution, judicial delays, lack of time-bound trials. All of these contribute, apart from an institutional reluctance, stroke bias to prosecute the guilty.
Thank you. Okay, Tarak Bhai, do you want to ask question or it was for?
No. I had an earlier question. Thank you very much for Shazia Ilmi, but she manipulated us all and showed what a true politician in India looks like these days.
Yep.
But I do have a follow-up question with these two people. Regarding the recent elections, and they are in India, they can give us a better, a review of what has happened, in spite of the fact that all the signs were towards massive victory for the Samajwadi Party in UP and other places. The opposition was supposed to do better, but BJP prevailed anyway, in spite of massive misgovernance and all the other things that had gone on in the last few years. So what happened?
Okay, that's a very big question. So please be brief, because I know there are different opinions about that, but let's hear from the speaker.
No, not our opinion. We already...
Mohibul, would you like to go first?
No, Teesta, you should go first.
Thank you, sir. So I sort of briefly referred to this earlier, and I like to repeat that, yes, there's no question that there is a victory for the BJP. They've got close to 42% of the vote. The Samajwadi Party is 80 seats up, but has narrowly lost in 60. So whether that could have been close to winning or not, if the election commission had functioned really impartially as it's supposed to do, is a question up for grabs. It's an academic question now because the results are out. But what I would like to say, and I'd like to repeat, that in the 9 to 10%, not 6% difference between the BJP vote and the Samajwadi vote is a challenge. It's a challenge for any party and any formation, and as citizens for all of us, because it basically means that earlier, I'm talking about pre-2014, we would say that the traditional BJP vote was something like 22%. And what has happened with these Modi Amit Shah's rise is that traditional vote has gone up to 32%. And then it's plus 32 to all the rest that they get, which is a formidable equation they manage. I personally have never been under any illusion that their victory has had to do with anything but the kind of extremely targeted and hatred that they have managed to legitimize, just like Advani had legitimized it earlier, 22 years earlier during the Rath Yatra, when the BJP rose from 2 to 89 seats. Having said that, I'd like to keep emphasizing that the fact that there is a 59% of vote which is not with them is something that needs to give us hope. We need to work with that. We need to look at that. And I think, coming to your point, Tariq Saab, that Samajwadi looked like it's winning, all of us hope. But I mean, for many of us, till 4 months ago, I really was not sure of it. We were almost sure that Adityanath is coming back. And the reason why we felt that is because till about 3.5 months before, you did not see opposition activity at all. There was no political activity and all. And I honestly believe that is the issue. Having accepted communalism and hatred, I'm not denying that. But I think a political party needs to be taken seriously. And you had, over the periods of 4.5 years, so many issues, including minority exclusion issues, which the party should have agitated on on the streets, in dharnas, the COVID deaths issue, so many issues. But if you're not available to people when they are in deep distress, then I feel a certain credibility and seriousness in the electorate goes away. And of course, you have the BJP, which has money power, muscle power, and a formidable election machine. I'm also under no illusion that the fact that Mayawati has a 12% vote and also played a certain kind of role by fielding Muslim candidates and all, played a role, that Mr. Owaisi also played a role. But I honestly speaking, I'm tired of blaming only Mr. Owaisi and Ms. Mayawati for this. The responsibility is on the largest opposition party. I think in 2017, it was Akhilesh and Congress that had come together, if I'm not mistaken, Mohib Saab, in 2017. Yes. In 2019, it was Akhilesh and BSP that came together. I don't understand why they don't take these alliances seriously. You know, I don't think we can be talking about defeating a behemoth like the BJP without a practical opposition alliance. Once election comes, they talk about their own seats and their own party, own dukan. And I think that is really something we need to put pressure on them about. Because otherwise you're taking people for granted and you're creating a lot of hopelessness, particularly on the most vulnerable section, which is India's poor and India's minorities.
Thank you. Very well said. So Mohib Saab, you want to add something?
Yeah. There are many factors, and Teesta has already highlighted. The most important factor that I will take into account is, you see that Mayawati had got 22% vote in the last assembly election, before this 2022. Now it has been reduced to 12%. Where this 10% vote has gone, that we have to see. And most of the psephologists and people who study political behavior, they say that most of these votes have gone to BJP. And that is a very significant factor that we have to take into account. Any formidable coalition against BJP will not succeed without taking into account that Dalits are the co-sufferers. So all the co-sufferers of the system, they have to come together. Neither Chandrasekhar was accommodated nor Mayawati was accommodated in the alliance. And of course, Mayawati played a very important role in the victory of BJP, that we know. But you see that a coalition, especially in UP, where the Muslims and Dalits, they together form more than 40% of the population. And you see, you have to accept the social reality in our country. Caste is a social reality. Community is a social reality. Patriarchy is a social reality, for example. So these social realities cannot be ignored. So this is the most important factor in 2024 when they are going for election. You have to see the various states where you have to make very smart kind of alliance. And if you're not going to have this kind of alliance, please again 60 to 70 seats that have been lost because why? Dalits were not included in this particular coalition. Otherwise, the result would have been very different.
Thank you. So Dalip Saab is the next, and then Hassan Qiyas Saab. Dalip Saab, please go ahead. Dalip Saab. Dalip.
No, then move on to Hassan.
Dalip Neem Saab.
Hassan Qiyas Saab, we will come back to.
Yeah, thank you very much, for giving me an opportunity. My regards to all the participants. I have already raised very pertinent and important questions in the chat box. If you could kindly go through them, you see, basically they are for Madam Setalvad and Professor Mohibul Haque. These questions are very, very relevant. And we have to have an understanding of these. I, as a Dalit activist, strongly feel that unless until the Muslim and the Dalit masses come together, nothing is going to happen. Leadership will come and go. Leaders will come and go. Mayawati will come and she will perish. But what about the masses? We have to understand the difficulties of the masses. Today, the present government is thinking in terms of Hindu Rashtra. But what about a Bahujan Rashtra, which is a majority Rashtra? Have we raised such questions? We are blaming whether it is Akhilesh, SP or BSP or whatever it is. But are we addressing those facts? Are we talking in terms of what is the correlation between casteism and communalism? Are we addressing that? What is the relation between religion and communalism? Are we addressing that? No, we are not addressing that. Those are the questions which should be answered and hammered into the minds and souls of our people. Otherwise, nothing will work. Thank you very much for listening to me and giving an ear to me.
Dalit Saab is a, Ambedkarite, and he's also an activist. He's always, most of the time, you will find him on ground, always talking to people, trying to bring people together. Thank you, Dalit Saab, for beautiful observation.
No, I fully agree with you, Dalit Saab. In fact, I've been always saying, that is why I've been telling people for the last one, that there's no point either criticizing Ms. Mayawati or criticizing even Owaisi Saab, frankly speaking. If we build up a social cohesion at the local level of people working on a program, then eventually leaders will have to fall in line. But the point is that if we don't do that, and then we expect this jugaad to take place at the top, it's not going to happen, because I think that moral fiber in the political class is not there. Okay, they have to see it as a response to work on the ground. And therefore the challenge is for us that why we not, I mean, we are trying, some of us are trying very hard, but I think we need to do it more, that we need to work on social cohesion programs at the local level. Now, for instance, I'll give you an example. We did a 9-month exercise of a fact-finding, really intensive survey into the weaving community, okay, in Purvanchal, which is covers about 9 districts, where I'm sure you know already, the Muslim community, Dalit and the OBC are involved in this activity. And that artisanal industry is being finished, okay? We did a huge survey. The effort has brought people together. Now we have to take that forward programmatically in terms of advocacy, because the livelihood has gone. People are working together. People are producing these skills together and products together. But eventually we have to devise a social program out of it, a social political program out of it. So I cannot agree with you more. The question is, I think more and more activists need to see this on the ground, because I'm a little tired of, blaming this group or that group, and then you sit on Twitter and then you blame people. It really is not going to work. I mean, I was arguing with somebody even about Owaisi Saab. I mean, I don't like his, personally, I don't relate to his politics, but that's not the point. No Muslim would go there. No Muslim would go there if they found reassurance among the Samajwadi Party and the secular parties, if they felt that. The reason why there's a resonance of this is because there's a failure somewhere else.
Thank you very much for giving a response. My only request, humble request, is that the Dalits have failed to lead. I'm not talking about the Dalit, leaders, but Dalits as such, the intellectuals have failed to lead. Now, my humble request is to our Muslim intellectual brethren to come ahead and lead from front.
All right.
Otherwise, we are going to be in big soup.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Hassan Ghiyas Saab. Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you. I wouldn't have edified Shazia Ilmi with a question, but I do have a question for Teesta and one for Professor Haque. The Muslims of India today are not just untouchables, they are unspeakables. No opposition party, in spite of the fact that some of them gained from their support in the elections, would even dare to take their name, let alone anything else, for fear of a backlash. Now, this is not going to change by itself. My question is, how should the Indian Muslims strategize their political approach to become more relevant in the political spaces? And my question to Professor Haque is that we all talk about reforms within the community and we feel the need for it. But where will the impetus for such reform come from? How is it going to happen? So these are my 2 questions.
I think because that first question was put to me, I just like to say with a sense of great humility that I feel there's a huge ask that all of us Indians are giving to the Indian Muslims today. A huge ask, ASK. And that ask is that you retain your faith in India, in the society, in the system, and you continue to work with those individuals, few as they may be, far as between as they may be, among other communities, particularly majority, whatever we call it, majority, Dalit, the non-Muslim community, to forge social issues and social and human rights demands. Okay, that is the only political answer, I feel, because that will eventually emerge into a political solution. It means the Muslim will have to, it's a very painful thing. This ask is a very painful ask, because you're asking them to ignore the daily intimidation, humiliation, and like you yourself said, the being rendered unspeakable and invisibilized, which is a humiliating experience. But I have had the fortune of working with people even now who find the grit to do that. They do it, they've not given up, because you can't afford to give up if you're living here. You don't have the luxury. It's not because of principle. You don't have the luxury. So the big ask, I say, is that you keep forging, chipping away and forging these alliances because I think it's only comprehensive interventions that will work. The moment you work only as the Muslim community or only as the Hindu community, there will be a label. So we need to constantly work towards socially cohesive interventions. Unashamedly saying that we are working for Muslim rights, Muslim human rights, but let the intervention be cohesive. Let the presence be cohesive, and that is what one is attempting. So right from socio-economic rights, political rights, and I think most important, security. I mean, can you imagine a country which is using bulldozer as a metaphor of victory in their victory matches? I mean, I've got about 20 videos now from across districts in UP where the local representatives of the BJP are using bulldozer in their victory procession. What is the message you're sending? You're sending a hugely intimidating message. So the task and the ask is huge. But I mean, if we don't retain our faith in delivering it, I think we won't be able to do anything, sir.
Thank you. Professor Haque.
I'll try to answer your question. Of course, it is very difficult to answer this kind of question, but you see, what I find that there is a huge gap between the people coming from, who are considered as people coming from the modern education background, and the people coming from the clergy, which has very important influence on the masses of the Muslim community. They have Juma, Khutbah, and all. This kind of, you will find whenever we try, means when the community tries some kind of reform, you will find that the reactionary elements within the community try to legitimize that stumbling block they put in on the basis of Islam. Dr. Sayyed also faced the same thing. Dr. Sayyed also faced the same challenge, and that challenge continues today. What I find, the change that today you'll find that the ulama, especially coming from the different, great madrasas like Deoband and Nadwa and other madrasas, they themselves want that there should be a better understanding between the intellectuals of the Muslim community and the clergy. Those, of course, they have the control over the masses. So ultimately, if that gap is bridged, and that, for example, Aligarh Muslim University is doing one thing that you all must be knowing about the bridge course, where the people coming from madrasa, they are given 2 years training and education in computer and English and sciences, and after that they go to different other courses in the country. From our university and from other universities, you will find this kind of steps that are being taken. These are very important. Number two, I have found what that the Muslim community is trying to say that educational institutions are to be established. A lot of educational institutions, that is the only panacea. And I will disagree, with this. Education enough, education, we have many educational institutions. The question is protecting your constitutional rights. Means we have Aligarh Muslim University seeking the protection of constitutional right, that is Article 30, Clause 1. Aligarh Muslim University established by the Muslims of India. Jamia Millia Islamia established by Muslims of India, and that is why they have a right to administer. But this party, these institutions like Aligarh Muslim University, like Jamia Millia Islamia, like Shibli Inter College, many other universities and colleges, they are facing existential threat. Then what? For example, if the government of India has already given an affidavit that these are not minority institutions. So what will happen? You will have, the same percentage of the students in the institutions like Aligarh and Jamia and other, institutions as they are in, JNU or VHU. And then they will, the people will talk.
Please conclude.
Just a very quick.
Hassan Saab, please leave it because there are many.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So thank you. And Arsha Sayyasa.
Yeah, first let me just thank
Hassan Saab, you can come back later in a chat and then we will talk about that, what you want to ask. Okay, Arsha Sayyasa.
Thank you. First, thanks to Teesta, and I think we're all indebted to the work that you're doing and others like you, without which I think it would be very difficult to kind of, and the courage that you're displaying in terms of, the work you do and the backlash that you endure. I can't imagine people doing that. So thanks for that. Maybe I think from the discussion, what I'm picking up, maybe 2 or 3 things in the question. One, as I understand, this is not a struggle just about minorities. It's not just about Dalits. It's a broader struggle, really about the soul of India, which is, liberalism. And if you look at that and you look at a broader picture of what's happening across the world, which is essentially authoritarianism, populism, nationalism, sectarianism, this is not just in India, it's happening across the world. And if you take that lens, then you begin to realize that I think the answer that we're trying to put forward for these solutions are perhaps band-aids or things that are pretty short-term oriented. And therefore, what is the long-term kind of approach to kind of dealing with some of the erosion that you're finding in the institutions of India? It's not about, I think, the politician or one state or the other state, which I do think are actually symptomatic or symptoms, if you will, of what's going on. But there's a larger, I think, struggle about where does India end up in terms of human rights, in terms of security, in terms of its own constitution, and what role does it take place in the global arena? I think, so maybe that's a little bit of a higher level question. And then practically speaking, what can people sitting in the US do? Because we are here. What can you do to kind of help and support the work that's going on there? Let me stop there. Thank you.
You see, there's no question that what you say is correct, that the fundamental issue is not just the soul of India, but I think the foundations that this country was laid on, which is that despite and in spite the horrors of partition, the wisdom that was shown by the diverse political leadership that we remain a constitutional republic and that our citizenship is based on composite and equality and non-discrimination and not religion or caste or gender based. I think that was a very, very important thing that we are fighting today. Now, the point is, I don't really think, Sir Ashad Bhai, that we are talking about short-term band-aids over here. When you're talking about programs for social cohesion, I think that is what has vanished. Which is the only organization today that is working at the social level? It is either the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh or the Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram. And they are funded, they are organized, they've got that one direction, which is to convert India into a theocratic state, etc. But where is the counter? At one point, you had the Rashtriya Seva Dal, you had the left cadres, you had IPTA, you had a host of such formations left to center, which actually were the bulwark of this. Okay, now those have all gone. Let's forget the august institutions for now, like the Election Commission and the Supreme. It's the society and the individuals in society that make up your institutions. Okay, so if your people in your society are not being organized and being actively engaged in a socio-political program to further the constitutional vision, which is a program of social cohesion, and this must happen in multiple ways. It must happen in the cultural arena, it must happen in the language arena, it must happen in the activist arena, it must happen in the rights arena. It's not a it is a multifarious battle, which it was as the national movement showed us. And all of us, our generation benefited 20, 30 years from that culture of that movement. But when that started eroding, what have we managed to rebuild?
Okay, thank you.
That is the whole issue.
Thank you. Next person, Mohib Saab, you don't have to say anything, right?
No.
Okay, thank you. So next person is Sohail Ahmed, and after that Sabia Fatma. Sohail Ahmed Saab, and those would most likely be last questions, or maybe I can add one more. Thank you. Sohail Saab, are you there? If not, Sabia.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Sohail Saab.
Sir, I have also written a question in the chat box, sir. Sir, I would like to read it from the chat box.
Yeah, go ahead and read it because there are so many questions.
Sir, actually, my question was that when the intellectuals from the majority from whom we are expecting to get some kind of support to counter the ideology which is being promoted and perpetuated on us. So I think when they are being forced by acts like UAP or any other actions by the government, and they are being forced to match their voices with the ideology that's being perpetuated. So from where we can expect the support will be come and we can fight this kind of ideologies.
You see, Sohail, first of all, the intellectuals from the majority community or minority community, that binary is again dangerous. One thing that we must remember that you see that how the lynching was protested in our country and who started the movement, Award Wapsi. All the people coming, those who were protesting and they started the Award Wapsi movement, they all were from, of course, the majority community, the intellectuals. Similarly, for example, Teesta is sitting over here. She is an intrepid fighter for human rights, and she's not a Muslim, but she has, faced all kind of hardship because of her activism. So you will find that the people from the different communities, those who want to save the very soul of India, that is diversity, that is, a liberal democratic space, that is unity in diversity, people are trying and they are trying their best. You can say, but what has happened? That the political parties, last point that I'm mentioning, you see the political parties, they are basically the political parties, they are just political parties. And they are fighting against an organization which is political, which has political organization, cultural organization, social organization, and all kind of organizations. So only a political, political formation cannot, deconstruct the discourse that has been constructed by a formation which has cultural dimension, which has, social dimension, and which has many other dimensions. That is the challenge.
Okay, so next person is Sabia Fatma.
Sir, am I audible to you?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Probably not visible.
You go ahead. I will put you on spotlight.
Okay, fine. Now, sir, actually my question is, I will be talking about the vulnerability part. I mean, everybody is, in all the media, it is going 36 Muslim MLA, 36 Muslim MLA, so much, talk about it, that the number of Muslim MLAs in UP Vidhan Sabha had increased. But I doubt that this will be counterproductive and Samajwadi Party will distance itself from Muslim community in the Lok Sabha election. Because this will work. Now, even now the situation is this, that even when Muslim wins, that also becomes a problem. That is also a problem that Muslim is winning. When a Muslim gets a good position in a college, that is also a problem, that Muslim is topper. So this is, no politician has not done this. This is in the society. They will not vote. I mean, there are reports, and I think they are very much correct, that the Dalits have voted BJP so that Samajwadi should not come to power. You talk of Dalit Muslim Ekta, where it is? Dalits are no longer Dalits. They have started identifying themselves as Hindus. They are on the second strata now. They consider themselves, they do all those things which upper caste Hindus do, and they think that they have become that.
Madam Fatma, are you giving the post-election analysis or do you have a question?
I'm asking a question, sir, that Muslim today is in such a position that even if he wins, that becomes a problem. That is a problem. I mean, the general public, sir, we people are the people who are working in private sectors, and we are surrounded by Hindus. We listen to their comments. We see their.
Where is the question? Can you be
The question is, my question is that what, I mean, if the society, it's not the politician, it has gone much, much deeper. It has come to the society.
Okay, so we know that as well, but what you want to say? What is your question?
What can be done, sir?
Okay.
You are talking of bulldozers now. I have seen visuals where a small child, maybe 4 years old child, he was dressed up like Yogi Adityanath, and as a toy, he was given a bulldozer in his hand. And people were, they were happy about it.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any solution, Mohib Saab? Quick solution.
Sabiha, I always say, and you are very much right, that it is not only othering a particular community. Rather, a particular community has been criminalized. You see, that has been projected as a criminal, as a criminal community, a community which is a threat to the country, a community which is, hell-bent upon destroying the country. So that is why it is just in the national interest that this particular community should be marginalized. You are very much right. That discourse is there. But if that discourse is there, we have spaces. Of course, we can discuss, deconstruct that discourse. And that is why the social coalition of all the co-sufferers. You see, we talk of atrocities on Dalits, atrocities on Muslims, atrocities on Christians, or atrocities on other OBC communities. But what about atrocities on people who are the system, who are the victims of the system? So that is why the only way to fight against this kind of blatant communal fascist agenda is to bring various communities, especially the poor sufferers, under one banner, and that is the only solution. There is no other solution.
Thank you. That was the last question. And Rudranshu, why do you have your hand raised again? Did you ask another question? If not, give back to Razibai.
I just had an observation for the UP elections.
No election analysis, please, because there are so differing opinions. Unless you have something to really burning.
Let him speak.
No, since I belong to UP.
I belong to, but there are so many analysis. Okay, go ahead.
Very brief, please. Very brief.
And one of my relatives was contesting an election. That is why I know the reality.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Owaisi has done the damage. We cannot leave him scot-free.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
The 60 seats, which had a minor difference, 500, 1,000, Mr. Owaisi had a role to play. That's all I had.
Ranchu, this is not, okay, I'm not going to discuss that because I have differing opinion. So, but that's okay because the in post-election analysis it's always the spoilers are blamed. So nothing new. Even in the US it happens. So, but I know this Owaisi and BSP are blamed for post-election analysis. So I'm not, very much impressed with that impression. But anyway, so I got it, what you are saying. And Razibai, back to you.
Okay, quite engaging session. We had a little, bitter experience today, which usually doesn't occur in our events. And we didn't expect this much, but that's probably the strategy of all those people. This was the first time we brought in one person from political party, and we had a taste of it. As far as election analysis, it is true, Rafat, whether we agree or not, but great majority agrees that BSP and OSC did the damage.
I do agree with that. I do agree with that.
No,
but why to blame them? I do agree with that. But why
we are
to
not
blame
blaming,
them?
we are just saying.
So that everyone knows because we also, everyone here in the forum knows that they vote.
I understand, but
they
the
were
larger,
the spoilers, but
yeah,
they have a democratic right.
The larger responsibility relies on Samajwadi that they should have been.
And let me hear from Fazal Bhai something new. I have read all your comments, all your emails, but if you have something new to say, Fazal Bhai. Okay, the session is over. Those who want to leave, that is fine. This is an informal discussion now. And thank you everyone for attending the.
I just want to say one thing, because I think it's very important that your forum remains proactive on all the issues concerning India. You'll need to keep intervening with the authorities, send letters, send communications, because many of you are not here, some of you are here. And I want to just end with a word of caution that I feel there's every likelihood that an all India NPR and NRC will be announced soon on the back of the UP victory, and that's going to create havoc and going to be a huge challenge for the social sector. So please train your eyes and ears on what's happening in India and keep intervening. I'm sorry, I have to leave now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
It is not going to be very soon. It will take some time because they know how to proceed also. Okay, Fazal Bhai.
I've expressed my opinion. I've not given a timeline to it, but I think most of our problem is we don't anticipate things enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right. So now it is open chat session.
Now it is just a chat session.
Please feel free to leave. Yeah.
Fazal Bhai, bring something new.
I have made my comments in chat box. Only thing I was going to say that I think that Madam Fatima alluded to that. It's a lots of hype that lots of Muslims have won seats there in UP. I think that itself is going to create a lots of problems. So
exactly.
Let's wait and see. There's nothing else actually to add. I think the BJP is going to be even bolder to execute their programs, which they have been waiting for this election. But everything has its end. I would only say that it's a responsibility of majority community to fight. Minority Muslims, they cannot fight alone. Being in India, those who are around, it's very difficult. You saw in Kanpur during NRC and CEA that how shooting was going on innocent Muslims and all those. But anyway, those who are there, they will deal with that. BJP will have its time run out eventually. When? Nobody knows.
Yeah. So, Fazal
Bhai, go ahead, Fazal.
एक जो आपने कहा उस पे तो ये फिट होता है ना कि BJP actually wants you to act as communal factor. So and that is the most damaging thing that you means that you will ever do.
Raji bhai, यही कह के गई है इल्मी साहिबा कि you are communal, all Muslims are communal.
क्या रफत ऐसा है कि why you are bringing इल्मी साहिबा as a devil's advocate?
उनकी opinion
मतलब so that is already known. And अभी जो आपको दिलीप साहब ने कहा, दिलीप साहब who comes from Dalit community, and he very clearly said and put a prescription before you that rather than capitalizing on established Dalit leader or Muslim leader, these two forces, Muslims as a community, Dalit as a community, unless they join hands and create a real Bahujan Samaj, unless you do that, you cannot become an effective force. But if you remain as a community, just for community's sake, and put that thing, you can win couple of seats in very dense Muslim populated area, but you are going to make non-Muslims more communalized. And you can never achieve your...
Razi bhai, this is a process. You should begin all 5 years before the election. ये नहीं है कि 3 महीने पहले आए और election शुरू कर दिया.
That's what they all are saying.
Can I come in here on an issue of importance? An issue of importance was raised, but not sufficiently discussed. And that is the reforms within the Muslim community. And here, can I make a comment? here Professor Mohibul Haque spoke about the role of the ulama. And correct me if I'm wrong, but to me it appears that the ulama and the Muslim professionals seem to be living on different planets. And I think it is important to build a consensus between those who are the ulama and have, whether we like it or not, mass appeal, and the professionals who may be in their own cocoons. My question to Mohib Saab, and that's the discussion I thought we should have, how do we create a platform for some exchange of opinions and views between professionals and professors like yourself and the ulama, so that we can come to some sort of a consensus about what needs to change within the community and how is it going to happen?
सर, इस जो आपने अभी बात की उसी सवाल में जवाब भी था कि इसके अलावा और कोई रास्ता नहीं है। अल्टीमेटली होता क्या है कि देखिए, जो हमारे उलमा है वो आइडेंटिटी के इश्यूज पे बहुत ज्यादा असर्ट करते हैं, मिसाल के तौर पर, और उसमें जो असर्शन होता है कभी कभी बहुत ही काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव होता है। जैसे अगर आप पूछें, एक बड़ी तादाद उलमा की आपको वो मिल जाएगी जो इंडिया में जिसे कहते हैं एबॉलिशन ऑफ चाइल्ड मैरिज एक्ट, वो एक इम्पॉर्टेंट एक्ट है और उसको बहुत ही प्रोग्रेसिव सेक्शन जो है हिंदू मुसलमान सिख ईसाई सब कुछ अप्रिशिएट करते हैं। 8 साल 9 साल 10 साल की बच्ची की शादी नहीं होनी चाहिए, बट अल्टीमेटली उसको भी अपोज करने वाले बड़ी तादाद में आपको मुस्लिम क्लर्जी के लोग मिल जाए, और अनफॉर्चुनेटली उतनी ही बड़ी तादाद में यूनिवर्सिटी प्रोफेसर्स और मुस्लिम प्रोफेशनल्स भी मिल जाए। जो अब यहाँ पे जो स्पेस मिलता है कि अगर 10 साल की जगह पे 18 साल की उम्र अगर गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया कर देती है और बच्ची की शादी के लिए, व्हाई शुड बी अपोज्ड बाय द मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी, मुझे समझ में नहीं आता। और अल्टीमेटली इसको जब लेकर के जब हम जिसको सोशल स्पेसेस में जाते हैं तो अल्टीमेटली एक रिएक्शन होता है। हिजाब, बुर्का और नकाब का पूरा जो डिफरेंस है वो समझे बगैर है। मुसलमानों की बड़ी तादाद ये समझती है कि उनको एग्जामिशन मिलना चाहिए बुर्का पहनने की, जिन स्कूलों और कॉलेजों में यूनिफॉर्म है। बात ये है कि वो हिजाब के लिए यानी स्कार्फ के लिए जो स्ट्रगल था उसको बुर्का या नकाब का स्ट्रगल बना दिया गया, और अल्टीमेटली उस पे
where is the catalyst?
नहीं, ऐसा है कि ये पूरा सेशन नहीं हो सकता और इतना लॉन्ग एंड सब पॉसिबल नहीं। आप लोग एक चीज क्यों नहीं करते, ये मॉडर्न एरा में जहां आपके सर्वाइवल और सारी चीजों का मामला है, वहां आप 10 साल की शादी और नकाब की बात सिर्फ कर रहे हैं, आपको प्रायोरिटी नजर नहीं आती कि कहाँ वी आर रियली लैकिंग, and that is the education. Why we don't talk about education? Why we talk about कि marriage की एज क्या है, मौलाना कब आएंगे? What a मौलाना has to do with education thing. आपकी priority में, we are all educated people here. Why the foremost priority that lacks in us is education. एक चीज से ही हर चीज का लिंक है। अगर आप एजुकेट कर दें तो वो नकाब का मामला भी सॉल्व करेंगे, शादी का मामला भी सॉल्व होगा। Why we don't see this as the key issue, and why that's why we lack also educationally at every level in every region, we really lack because our priority कभी भी नहीं एजुकेशन में रही और हमने खुद भी कुछ नहीं किया। ये प्रॉब्लम है ना कि ठीक है नहीं, हम लोग का ये बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम। देखिए पूरे उसमें हमारा फोकस में एक भी आदमियों में से एक ने भी ये नहीं कहा कि एजुकेशन, वो हिंदू मुस्लिम किया और शादी की मैरिज की बात की, अलायंस की बात की, एक ने भी ये नहीं कहा कि इनर मोहल्लाज में, सुन लीजिए, इनर मोहल्लाज में इधर उधर हर लेवल पे एजुकेशन कहाँ।
Mohib sir, if you please permit me, can I say something?
Sure.
Sir, I have been, आप जो मुझसे कह रहे हैं ना, मैं जो हूँ ये CAA NRC का जो मूवमेंट हुआ था, मैं शाहीन बाग तक गई हूँ और मैं उसमें एक्टिव थी। यहाँ लखनऊ में ये घंटा घर पे ये होता था। आप जो कह रहे हैं सर, मैं आपको बिल्कुल एक लाइव बात बता रही हूँ। मैं भी यही बात कह रही थी जो आप कह रहे हैं, बीइंग इंटेलेक्चुअल, और मैं ये बात किसी दूसरी साहिबा से कह रही थी कि ये सब क्यों हो रहा है। इस सब की वजह जो है गुर्बत है और लाइल्मी है, हम लोग जो पढ़ा नहीं पाए। एक बहुत ही गरीब तबके की औरत वहां खड़ी हुई थी और वो मुझसे आई और मुझसे लड़ने लगी कि बेटा गरीब ही तो बैठे हैं यहाँ सारे, अनपढ़ ही तो बैठे हैं यहाँ सारे, जिनके बल पे तुम ये पूरा मूवमेंट चला रहे हो। कौन है यहाँ पर?
तो क्या कहना चाहती
और
हैं?
सर मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि सर मतलब हम जो अपने को ना इंटेलेक्चुअल समझ के ये कह लेते हैं कि इसका रीजन जो है गरीब लोग हैं, इसके रीजन जो है जाहिल लोग हैं। ये जो 36 सर आए हैं ना एमएलए, जिसके लिए हम लोग बहुत अपने पे फक्र कर रहे हैं, ये उनके वोट से आए हैं।
सुनिए, आप मेरा खास समझ नहीं रहे ये बात को। नहीं, आप पॉलिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं हर चीज को। देखिए, चाहे वो गरीब से वोट से आए हो, चाहे अमीर वोट से आए हो,
एजुकेशन का मामला अलग है।
नहीं, अलग नहीं है। नो, इट इज लिंक्ड। आपके रिलीजन से, आपकी सोशल लाइफ से, आपकी मैरिज से, आपके एम्प्लॉयमेंट से, हर चीज से एजुकेशन इज लिंक्ड। वी आर
इसी बात पे रजी भाई, इस बात पे हम आपसे एग्री करते हुए एक चीज मैं आपके सामने रख रहा हूँ सवाल के।
रिलीजन को इसमें लाने की कोई जरूरत नहीं।
एक बात मैं आपसे रजी भाई, एक बात मैं आपसे, अब आप रिसोर्स पर्सन बन जाए, हम आपसे सुनना चाह रहे हैं। एक बात, मेरा सवाल का जवाब आप दीजिए। हिंदुस्तान में जब मुसलमानों की पूरी बैकवर्डनेस की बात की जाती है या उनके मार्जिनलाइजेशन की बात की जाती है, तो उसमें एक फैक्टर, सिंगल फैक्टर, हम पढ़े लिखे मुसलमान हमेशा ये कहते हैं कि एजुकेशनली बैकवर्ड। देखिए, अगर एरिस्टोटल से लेकर के मार्क्स तक तमाम बड़े थिंकर्स को देख लीजिए, इंसेंटिव एंड प्रोग्रेस की लॉजिक देखिए। इंसेंटिव और प्रोग्रेस का मतलब ये होता है कि दलित कम्युनिटी में आज की डेट में ये जो एजुकेशन की तरफ इतना बड़ा रुझान है, या ओबीसी कम्युनिटी में एजुकेशन की तरफ इतना बड़ा रुझान है, या एसटी कम्युनिटी में जो एजुकेशन की तरफ जाने का रुझान है, उसका जो सबसे बड़ा फैक्टर है, थैंक्स टू डॉक्टर अम्बेडकर, वो है रिजर्वेशन, स्टेट का अफर्मेटिव एक्शन, जिससे एक्सक्लूड किया गया मुसलमानों को आर्टिकल 9 यानी ऑर्डर 1950 के। अब एक दूसरा फैक्टर देखिए, आप उस कम्युनिटी से कह रहे हैं कि एजुकेशन की तरफ जाओ, जिसने फैज़ आम कॉलेज, जिसने मुस्लिम डिग्री कॉलेज के नाम से, फैज़ आम गांधी कॉलेज के नाम से, या थाउजेंड्स ऑफ मदरसाज या बड़ी बड़ी यूनिवर्सिटीज। आपने कभी सोचा है हिंदुस्तान में कि स्टडी कीजिए कि दलित कम्युनिटी ने एज अ कम्युनिटी हिंदुस्तान में कितनी यूनिवर्सिटी और कितने कॉलेज बनाए? ओबीसी कम्युनिटी, देखिए कंपैरेटिव स्टडी होती है।
नहीं, अच्छा मोहित साहब रुक जाइए। वही हुआ ना कि ये वी टॉक इन डिटेल्स ऑन ए स्मॉल प्लेटफॉर्म फॉर ए स्मॉल टाइम। आपने पीछे से पहले भी आपने एक क्वेश्चन इस पर किया था कि मुस्लिम्स ने बहुत एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन बनाए, दलितों ने एक नहीं। सुनिए, एक बात मैं आपको बता दूं, अभी आपको क्वेश्चन, आपने एक बात ये भी एक्सप्रेस की कि हम इंसेंटिव होता है एजुकेशन का, हमारे पास क्या इंसेंटिव है, इसलिए कि रिजर्वेशन है। इससे ज्यादा गलत बात, यानी बहुत ब्लंटली मैं कह रहा हूँ, इससे ज्यादा गलत बात कि इंसेंटिव एजुकेशन का आप उस वक्त फील करेंगे जब आपके लिए एक रिजर्व कोटा कहीं होगा। दैट मीन्स देयर इज, ये तो कम्युनिज्म का भी बियॉन्ड चला गया कि आपको कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं, एवरीबडी विल बी टेकन केयर ऑफ। दलितों को भी वहां तक जाने के लिए पढ़ना पड़ा। आपका तो पढ़ने का प्रॉब्लम है। प्राइमरी जरा सा डेटा निकालिए, एलिमेंट्री स्कूल, सेकेंडरी स्कूल में जरा डेटा मुस्लिम्स का निकालिए और मुस्लिम्स का पैटर्न देखिए आप। नहीं, अब डिफरेंट एजुकेशन, किसने आपसे कहा कि आप फैज़ आम ही में जाके पढ़िए? आप नॉर्मल स्कूल में पढ़िए। आप देखिए, मुस्लिम एजुकेटेड क्लास के ऊपर उसके शोल्डर पे सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम यही आया कि वो सिर्फ अपने कैरियर में जिसने पढ़ लिया, अपना नौकरी उसने सिक्योर की और मुड़ के नहीं देखा गरीब तबके की तरफ। और गरीब तबका जब नहीं पढ़ाया जाएगा, उसमें सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट का जज्बा, और कहाँ जाएगा, खाना उसको खाना है तो वो सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट वाली बात करता है। लेकिन उस सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट को आप जब पढ़ेंगे, यू कैन क्रिएट स्मॉल बिजनेसेस, you can create your institution, you can create publication house, you can create everything। लेकिन जब आप पढ़ेंगे नहीं तो आपकी डिपेंडेंसी कहीं और होगी, और रिजर्वेशन आपके पास है नहीं, तो आप इसी तरह से भटके फिरेंगे। आप ये बताइए कि एक भी कोई सेंटर, कोई फ्री बच्चों के लिए कोई जगह पूरे यूपी में आप नाम दीजिए, 45 मिलियन मुस्लिम्स रहते हैं, 45 मिलियन मुस्लिम्स उस जगह पे हैं। एक ग्रैंड इंस्टीट्यूशन बना दिया आपने, क्या नया कि इंटीग्रल, उसमें जो पैसा जाता है वो गरीब मुसलमान तो उसको नहीं दे पाए। आपने फ्री इंस्टीट्यूशन कोई भी ऐसा बनाया जो क्वालिटी का हो? क्यों नहीं बनाया? अगर ये क्वेश्चन आता क्यों नहीं बनाया? अगर गवर्नमेंट आपके साथ नहीं कोऑपरेट कर रही और आपका रिजर्वेशन भी नहीं है, इसलिए कि हम इतने बेवकूफ हैं कि हम कहते हैं इस्लाम एक है, कोई इसमें जात नहीं, जबकि एवरीडे लाइफ में हमारी जात है। कोई छोटा है, कोई है नहीं मानते। तो मान लिया आपने मजबूर है, आप खुद क्यों नहीं अपने पैर पे खड़े होते? अलीगढ़ की बात मैंने इसलिए कही कि वहां पे तो मैं रोज जानता हूं कि वहां क्या होता है। अलीगढ़, जामिया, एल्सवेयर, इधर उधर मुस्लिम्स के पास इतने गरीब भी नहीं है, वो क्यों नहीं कलेक्टिव फंड इकट्ठा करते हैं? उनको क्या गवर्नमेंट गन से लेके मार देगी कि तुम पढ़ रहे हो? ऐसा है क्या? नहीं करेगी। क्यों नहीं बता रहे?
रजी भाई ये कैच 22 है। गो अहेड हक साहब।
सर
रजी भाई, आप प्रैक्टिकल डिफिकल्टी एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस को एस्टैब्लिश करने की और रिकॉग्निशन की, यानी
या वो भी मत करो, वो भी मत करो, ऐसे से कहीं और इनरोल कर दो, पढ़ो तो।
आप अगर फील्ड में आएंगे तो आपको वल्नरेबिलिटीज पता करेंगे, एक्टिविस्ट की और इस तरह की जो कलेक्शन करते हैं फंड की।
I am in the field, that's why I'm saying I am in the field.
फंड कलेक्ट करके जो लोग एस्टैब्लिश करते हैं, बहुत अच्छे अच्छे मूवमेंट चल रहे हैं यहाँ पे, और उनको जिन चीजों का चैलेंज करने पड़ते हैं।
सर आपका थोड़ा सा मिसकंसेप्शन है सर।
नहीं, हम लोग
इम्पार है, एएमपी है, ज़कात फाउंडेशन है, परवाज फाउंडेशन है सर, मैं खुद चला रही हूँ और कितने ही बच्चों को पढ़ाया है।
जी हम लोग भी यहाँ से चला रहे हैं, ऐसा नहीं कि हम लोग को मालूम नहीं है। आपके बगली में बैठे हुए ये साहब फजल साहब हैं अलीगढ़ अलुमनाई के, पूछिए इनसे कि कितना पैसा यहाँ हर साल यहाँ से भेजा जाता है। तो ऐसा नहीं कि
आप लोग ये बात तो भूल ही जाते हैं कि कितना भी आप कर लीजिए, जब तक गवर्नमेंट इन्वॉल्व नहीं होगी किसी
वो तो एक अलग इश्यू है, वो तो
वही इश्यू है।
नहीं सर, वो इश्यू है, वो द इश्यू है,
वो ही इश्यू है।
तो वो इश्यू तो आपकी मजबूरी हो गई ना, मान लिया वो आपकी मजबूरी है, तो अब आप क्या कीजिएगा ये बताइए।
अब आप 1-2% को, 3% को, 5%।
मैं क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा हूँ रिवर्स में, मैं क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा हूँ आपसे।
मैं बताऊं सर आपको, राजीव सर है ना, यहाँ जहाँ मैं राजस्थान में काम कर रही हूँ, यूपी का मेरा एक्सपीरियंस नहीं है। मैं राजस्थान के मुस्लिम बच्चों की छोटे 0 to एलिमेंट्री एजुकेशन का, हमारी स्कूल के पास ही सरकारी स्कूल है और मुस्लिम बस्ती का स्कूल मुश्किल से 100 मीटर 150 मीटर दूर है, लेकिन वहां हिंदू टीचर जाके पढ़ाना नहीं चाहता। तो वो बेचारे छोटे छोटे से बच्चे जो 10 साल के अंदर के बच्चे हैं, वो यहाँ पढ़ने आते हैं और यहाँ उनकी हालत इतनी बुरी है कि उनको अध्यापक पढ़ाना ही नहीं चाहता। और आप सरकार के कंट्रीब्यूशन की बात करते हैं सर, टीचर को 70-80 हजार रुपया पर मंथ सैलरी मिलती है, वो उसको अनार का आम का ही नहीं पढ़ाता। तो मैं तो 2 मिनट का, मेरे लिए तो 1 सेकंड का रास्ता है वो स्कूल जाने का। तो मैं अक्सर स्कूल जाती हूँ, बच्चों से बात करती हूँ, बेटा कहाँ से आए हो, क्या पढ़ रहे हो, एंड दे ऑल आर मुस्लिम किड्स। कोई पढ़ाना ही नहीं चाहता, बच्चों को कैसे पढ़ाएंगे हम?
क्या मतलब कोई पढ़ाना नहीं चाहता?
टीचर,
अरे भाई तो मुसलमान टीचर बना के पढ़ाओ, कौन सी बड़ी बात।
तो
अगर
हम तो तैयार है पढ़ाने को, और वो जो अध्यापक जो रिक्रूटेड है गवर्नमेंट के थ्रू, वही नहीं पढ़ा
रहा। My question is, suppose I am raising a question, governments are totally opposing you, ठीक है, हम मान गए, आपके पास रिजर्वेशन नहीं, हम मान गए। नाउ मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी का अपना फर्ज क्या है ये हम पूछ रहे हैं। अगर मान लिया कोई नहीं पढ़ाना चाहता, कहीं कुछ नहीं है, खुद मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी बार बार क्यों यही चीज करके बच जा रही है कि गवर्नमेंट करेगी तभी होगा। ठीक है, गवर्नमेंट नहीं कर रही, हम कह रहे गवर्नमेंट नहीं कर रही है, दैट्स इट। हम कह रहे हैं रिजर्वेशन नहीं है। अब आपके पास मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी है, वो अपना क्या कर रही है ये तो दिखाओ कम से कम, वो क्या कर रही है।
हाँ, तो वो भी तो नहीं पढ़ा रहे हैं। एक हमारे नसीम, क्या नाम है, जो भी सर है, वो भी नहीं पढ़ा रहे हैं ना सर। मैंने उनको कहा, मैंने कहा सर आप रिटायर्ड हो गए, अपने बच्चों को पढ़ाइए, वो नहीं पढ़ा रहे।
वही बात है, सुन लो, वही बात है। ये दिलीप साहब जरा आप बता दीजिएगा। हाँ बिल्कुल, मैं आ रहा हूँ। ये इश्यू है, मुस्लिम मुझसे भागता है, मैं मुसलमान हूँ, बहुत एक्टिविस्ट हूँ, यहाँ से लेकर के वहां तक, और ये ट्रू है। हम टोटल जो हमारे कंधों पे है, वी आर टोटली इनसेंसिटिव एंड फेल्ड। क्यों? कि हमको आदत हो गई है, रिजर्वेशन नहीं है तो हम क्या करें, या हमारे लिए गवर्नमेंट करे। हर चीज में हम पॉलिटिक्स में जाके अपने को सरेंडर कर देते, लेकिन खुद एफर्ट नहीं करते। रिलीजन को लाते हैं, मुल्ला को लाते हैं।
ये बहुत ओवर सिंपलिस्टिक है रजी भाई,
भाई
ओवर
अभी
सिंपलिस्टिक है।
सुनिए, एक साहबा ने कहा ना कि हम लोग यहाँ बहुत कर रहे हैं। वी नो कि क्या हम लोग कर रहे हैं वहां, जब भी हम लोग का इतना बुरा हाल हुआ। दिलीप साहब आप बताइए क्या है?
सर प्लीज सर ऐसे मत कहिए। मैं आई एम नॉट फ्रॉम दैट स्कूल ऑफ थॉट दैट हु विल लिसन टू ऑल दिस। जब हम कर रहे हैं और जब हमने मूवमेंट चलाई है तो मैं कहूंगी कि मैं कर रही हूँ।
तो आप बिल्कुल कर रही हैं, बट व्हाट यू आर डूइंग इज नॉट गुड
एनफ। और आप बात कर रहे हैं, आप बताइए आजमगढ़ में शिबली कॉलेज है, बस्ती में खैर इंटर कॉलेज है, ये सब कॉलेजेस हैं और यहाँ से निकले हैं। ऐसा तो नहीं है कि एजुकेशन की बात एजुकेशन से आगे निकल गई है सर।
थैंक यू। आई एम फ्रॉम शिबली कॉलेज, आई एम ए प्रोडक्ट ऑफ शिबली स्कूल, शिबली कॉलेज, एंड आई हमारी फैमिली जो है उस कॉलेज के अंदर जो है 100 साल से काम कर रही है। सो आई नो ऑल दैट। ओके, सो प्लीज इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि वहां कुछ भी काम नहीं हो रहा, बट ये साल्ट के बराबर काम होने वाली बात है। आप दिलीप साहब बात कीजिए, जो भी बताइए। हमारा प्रॉब्लम आपकी जबान से हम सुनना चाहते हैं, आप कैसे हमको देखते हैं।
राजी साहब बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। देखिए क्वेश्चन क्या है, आपने जो पॉइंट रेज करा है एजुकेशन का, वो एक बहुत वैलिड पॉइंट है, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ एक जो चीज निकल कर आती है वो नॉलेज की है। और नॉलेज किस तरीके से कि क्या मैं ये महसूस करता हूं कि मैं जब तक नहीं पढ़ूंगा तो मैं साइकिल में पंचर ही लगाता रहूंगा। ये क्या मैं महसूस करता हूं? क्या ये मेरी कम्युनिटी महसूस करती है कि मेरे को आगे पढ़ना है, लिखना है, आगे चलना है? क्या हम उन किताबों को पढ़ते हैं? हम नहीं पढ़ते। हम ये देखते हैं कि पंचर किस तरीके से हम लगाएंगे जो कि 2 दिन के 4 दिन तक चिपका रहेगा। वेरी वैलिड थिंग। आपने बात करी दलित की, रिजर्वेशन की भी बात आई। ठीक है, रिजर्वेशन था, सब कुछ था, लेकिन आज का जो दलित बच्चा है वो ये कह रहा है आई विल फाइट ऑन द सेम फुटिंग ऑन मेरिट। मेरे को रिजर्वेशन नहीं चाहिए, वो कहता है मेरे को पढ़ाई चाहिए। I want to be a graduate, I want to be a post graduate, I want to be a MBA, I want to be a PhD। वो इस तरफ जा रहा है। तो क्वेश्चन ये है कि वो जो नॉलेज जो है अंदर, जो जागृति है, क्या वो आ रही है? मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि सब दलितों में आ गई है, लेकिन वो प्रक्रिया चल रही है। लेकिन मुस्लिम समाज के अंदर वो चीज अभी नहीं है। मैं दिल्ली में रहता हूं, दिल्ली में जामा मस्जिद में चले जाइए, आप गाली गलौज और गुल्ली डंडा रहता है। तो क्वेश्चन ये है कि जब तक हमारे हाथों में कलम नहीं आएगा, हम जब तक नहीं महसूस करेंगे वो कलम होना चाहिए, और साथ में एक यूनिटी। आप प्रोफेसर साहब ने ये बोला, एक बड़ा वैलिड पॉइंट बोला कि यूनिटी ऑफ दोज पीपल हु आर ऑप्रेस्ड एंड को सफरर्स। तो हम ये रिजर्वेशन की बात क्यों कर रहे हैं? हमें ये समझना चाहिए कि हम दोनों ही को सफरर्स हैं, हमें मिलकर चलना पड़ेगा। मैं तो ये भी कहता हूं कि एक दलित को मुसलमान को पढ़ाना चाहिए, अगर पढ़ा सकता है तो क्यों नहीं होना चाहिए, एंड वाइस वर्सा। अब फॉर एग्जाम्पल, मैं आई हैव नॉट बीन एबल टू कंट्रीब्यूट मच, बट आई हैव गॉट ए आदिवासी kid in my home and I'm giving him education, and he's going to the same school as I used to go। तो मैं ये चाहता हूं कि इस तरीके से 1 2 4 को अगर करेंगे तो वो और आगे बढ़ेगी चीज। सो द चेन विल बी देयर, बट आर वी वांटिंग टू मेक द चेन और नॉट? दैट इज द इशू, एंड इट स्टार्ट्स विद एजुकेशन। आई एग्री विद यू राजी जी, एजुकेशन इज फॉर मोस्ट। अगर अंबेडकर ने एजुकेशन नहीं करी होती, क्या होता?
नहीं होता। आप ये देखिए, आप देखिए, इसमें बुरा किसी को मानने वाले, नथिंग पर्सनल। आप देखिए, आपने रीजन और रैशनल के साथ एक बात की, रैशनलिटी दिखाई। हमारे 2 स्टीम्ड लोग जो हमारे दोस्त हैं, उन्होंने डिफेंसिव होकर बात की, दोनों मुसलमान हैं, कि आप क्यों ऐसे बात कर रहे हैं, इतना हम लोग कर रहे हैं। अरे बाबा, ये तो सबको मालूम है कि आप कहीं कहीं कुछ कर रहे हैं। Why don't you feel that heat कि इस कंट्री में, जब मतलब इंडिया में, जब यहाँ ये प्रॉब्लम्स हैं और हमारे साथ हैं, तो हमारी कम्युनिटी, क्या आपको अपनी आंख से दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है कि इतने जो IAS मुस्लिम रिटायर हुए, उन्होंने क्या लीडरशिप रोल लिया? इतने इंजीनियर से रिटायर होके बैठे, उन्होंने क्या किया? इतने डॉक्टर्स हर शहर में कहीं न कहीं है, वकील हैं, वो क्या कर रहे हैं? हर चीज हम थोड़ी करें कि अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी क्या कर रही है। आखिर कितनों भी खराब हाल हो, मुस्लिम वहां पे रिटायर होके एजुकेटेड क्लास और जो अभी रिटायर नहीं हुआ वो दिखाई दे रहा है। हर शहर में एक बिजनेस क्लास भी दिखाई दे रहा है। हमने खुद अंडर दिस सिचुएशन क्या इंसेंटिव है, क्या किया है फजल भाई?
Sir, can I intervene? Can I make a small point?
अरे फौरन बोल दिया कीजिए भाई।
जी जी सर, बात ये है कि हमारे जो तालीमी इदारे हैं, आई एम सॉरी टू से, आई माइट ऑफेंड द प्रोफेसर्स ऑन द पैनल, वो बहुत ही घटिया लेवल के हैं। वो कोई क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग पैदा ही नहीं कर पाते। द ओनली डिफरेंस बिटवीन इंडिया एंड यूएसए में भी डिक्टेटर बनने की कोशिश की ट्रंप ने, लेकिन वहां की यूनिवर्सिटीज ने उसको रोक दिया। वहां की यूनिवर्सिटीज ने उसको डिक्टेटर नहीं बनने दिया, क्योंकि वहां के मासेस में क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग थी। वहां ट्रंप ने भी मेजॉरिटी अपीजमेंट करने की कोशिश की कि आई विल एस्टेब्लिश व्हाइट सुप्रीमेसी, लेकिन उसके आइडिया को आईवी लीग यूनिवर्सिटीज ने डैमेज कर दिया। हमारी जो यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं वो सिर्फ इतना काम करती हैं कि भैया पढ़ो, नौकरी कर लो, नौकरी लग जाएगी तो शादी हो जाएगी। हमारी जो हम ईस्टर्न सोसाइटीज के लोग हैं, उनकी जिंदगी में दो ही गम होते हैं, नौकरी और शादी, बस।
आपको दोनों मिली कि नहीं मिली?
मुझे दोनों में से अभी कोई सी भी नहीं मिली हुई है सर।
ओके,
चलिए आप हम बराबर के शरीक हैं, लेकिन
तो हमारा रिसर्च ओरिएंटेशन नहीं है। नेसेसिटी इज द मदर ऑफ इन्वेंशन, बट रिसर्च इज द फादर ऑफ इन्वेंशन। When necessity and research copulate, then inventions are born. How many inventions can be attributed to Hindus or to Muslims? We are living in a world made by Christians. एक माचिस से लेके और हवाई जहाज तक जो बना है दुनिया में, वो क्रिश्चियंस ने बनाया है। दुनिया में कैलेंडर उनका चल रहा है।
हमने 1500 साल पहले बनाई थी ना, उसके बाद हम बहुत खुश हो गए थे, फिर सो गए। तो आप
अरे सिंह साहब आप कहाँ ले जा रहे हैं इसको? देखिए, शुरुआत जो थी वो एजुकेशन और नॉलेज की बात है, आप किस तरफ चले गए? आप तो दूसरी तरफ चल रहे हैं सिंह साहब। बेसिक में तो क्लैरिटी है नहीं, तो फिर कहाँ जाएंगे आप?
भाई आप लाइट नोट पे बात कीजिए।
भाई फजल भाई आप बताइए कि आखिर हम क्यों नहीं कुछ कर रहे हैं, और करना चाहिए कि नहीं? अब बेकार बातें हैं ये सब।
नहीं करना चाहिए। कर रहे हैं तो घर वाले ही निकाल देते हैं सर। आप दलीप साहब यहाँ बैठे हैं, एक दलित को नौकरी दो तो घर वाले कहते हैं तेरे यहाँ तो है ना वो हरिजन आता है, तुम तेरे यहाँ का पानी नहीं पियेंगे।
हो गया, चलिए फजल साहब की बात सुन लीजिए।
नहीं, मैं
I don't agree निधि जी, I don't agree with you.
I am facing sir, I am the victim.
There may be solitary cases there, but it is not
generalized.
You cannot generalize that.
देखिए, मैं ये कह रहा था कि रजी जो कह रहे हैं, एजुकेशन मस्ट है अंडर व्हाट एवर सर्कमस्टांसेस, और अगर गवर्नमेंट नहीं हेल्प कर रही है तो ठीक है, हम अपना करेंगे जितना कर सकते हैं, जो कुछ लोगों ने कहा कर भी रहे हैं, तो करना चाहिए। लेकिन बहुत सी बाधाएं आती हैं इंडिया में, ऐसे थर्ड वर्ल्ड मुल्क में, गवर्नमेंट के बगैर हेल्प के। लेकिन मैं आखिर में ये कह रहा था कि ये बहुत हो गई, अब लाइट नोट पे
बहुत हेवी हो गया, बहुत हेवी हो गया।
एक हेवी बात मुझे करनी है।
कोई भी एजुकेशन जरूरी है जो है, जैसे भी हो।
अच्छा, हेवी बात कोई और कर रहा है हमारे
सर। एक हैवी बात मुझे करनी थी सर। मैं इंडियन मुस्लिम्स को देख रहा हूँ, वहीं जा रहे हैं जहाँ के अमेरिकन ब्लैक्स 400 साल से इनके खिलाफ इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज रेसिज्म हो रहा है और वो आगे नहीं बढ़ पाते। ऐसा नहीं है कि यहाँ ब्लैक्स ने कॉलेजेस नहीं खोले ऑन देयर ओन, लेकिन जहां गवर्नमेंट बिल्कुल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज कर दे सर, वो गेटो बन जाते हैं। इंडियन मुस्लिम्स का फ्यूचर बहुत तारीक है। हम प्राइवेटली जितने भी स्कूल्स और कॉलेजेस खोल रहे हैं, कभी वो गवर्नमेंट के हेल्प को रिप्लेस नहीं कर सकता। तो आई सी अ वेरी डार्क फ्यूचर फॉर इंडियन मुस्लिम्स। इसमें बहुत ही डिप्रेसिंग है मामला इस वक्त।
चलिए अब हम लोग इतना डिप्रेसिंग नहीं देखते। व्हाट आवर इश्यू इज कि गवर्नमेंट जनरल चीजों में डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं करती। हाँ, हमारे लिए अलग से प्रोग्राम नहीं है, ये आप कह सकते हैं। लेकिन ऐसा भी नहीं है, अगर आप जाके देखें तो अंडर इसी कांग्रेस की या दूसरी गवर्नमेंट में बहुत सी स्कॉलरशिप्स के ऐसे हैं कि जो चल रही है मुस्लिम्स के लिए गियर्ड है, मुस्लिम और लड़कियों के लिए भी है। हमारा प्रॉब्लम खुद अपनी अवेयरनेस है कि कितने लोगों को, आई टेल यू इन लखनऊ पीपल आर टेलिंग मी हु आर रनिंग दिस कोचिंग सेंटर्स कि बहुत लोगों को मुस्लिम मोहल्लों में पता ही नहीं कि हमारे यहाँ कितने प्रोजेक्ट गवर्नमेंट के हैं जो आप अवेल कर सकते हैं, कितनी हेल्प मौजूद है जो आप ले नहीं सकते, इसलिए कि वहां वाकई ये बात है कि एक सर्टेन क्लास को छोड़ के ज्यादातर पढ़ने लिखने का कोई माहौल है ही नहीं, जीरो है। तो ये एक अवेयरनेस की जिम्मेदारी किस पर है? ये जिम्मेदारी जो एजुकेटेड मुस्लिम क्लास है उसके ऊपर है, जो सोशल एक्टिविस्ट उसको होना मस्ट है, और वो नहीं हो रहा है। आप जहां जाइए दे आर सो, अगर जो वेल ऑफ एजुकेटेड हैं वो दे आर सो, दे हैव नथिंग एल्स टू से, दे जस्ट माइंड देयर ओन लाइफ। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा इशू है और इस इशू से आप इसको इनकार नहीं कर सकते। ये अवेयरनेस जो आपने कहा दलितों में आई है, वो अवेयरनेस आई पढ़ने की और उनको बराबर बनाने की। हमारे यहाँ खाली बिटरनेस आई है कि हमारे साथ कोई कुछ हो ही नहीं रहा तो हम कुछ नहीं करेंगे। क्या करें, क्या फायदा है?
रजी भाई, फजलुर रहमान साहब बहुत अच्छी बात कर रहे थे कि लाइटर नोट पे खत्म होना चाहिए। तो आप तो खैर वहां पे बैठे हुए, किसी का बहुत अच्छा शेर मुझे याद आता है कि मोहब्बत को समझना है तो ना से खुद मोहब्बत कर, किनारे से कभी अंदाजा तूफान नहीं होता।
ये देखिए, यहाँ तो ये आपने देखा ना, ये जो आपने वाली मारी हमारे ऊपर, तो वो सुनिए, वो क्यों, वो लाइटी पे हम कहेंगे, ये अक्सर आता है। और ये बता दूं, अगर रिवर्स पड़ गया तो ये बहुत बार देसी लोगों ने, हमारे खुद रिश्तेदारों का, कि आप लोगों को क्या मालूम कि वहां से आप बैठ के बड़ा आराम से कहते। एंड आई एक्चुअली टेल देम कि मुझे आके शॉक लगता है इंडिया में कि इनफैक्ट इट इज द रिवर्स वे, इट इज द रिवर्स वे। आपने अभी कह दिया ना, ये शेर पढ़ दिया, आपको नहीं मालूम कि अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी हो, जो जामिया हो, जो कहीं भी हो, जो सेंटर्स है मुस्लिम्स के, जितना अवेयरनेस और जितना काम यहाँ बैठ के लोग वहां के बच्चों के लिए कर रहे हैं, वहां इकट्ठा कोई कर ही नहीं रहा। ये तो ये पता नहीं आप कैसे कर रहे हैं। आपने जो कहा ना, ये नहीं ये नहीं कहा, आपको मालूम, हम यहाँ बैठ के सब का सब हमने इंडिया के बच्चों, गरीब बच्चों के लिए करते हैं, यहाँ फंड रेज करते हैं। वहां तो हमने देखा कोई करता नहीं। एक लाख
आपको वहां पे ईडी का डर नहीं है रजी साहब? आपके यहाँ ईडी का आपको डर नहीं है जब आप ये काम कर रहे हैं? तो
नहीं है
ईडी सर, ईडी
एनफोर्समेंट डायरेक्टरेट।
नहीं, आप समझ नहीं रहे, ये सब बहाने हैं, ये सब बहाने हैं।
नहीं, बहाने नहीं है सर,
मैं एक
ईडी के
कमेंट
जमाने हैं।
मैं एक कमेंट करना चाह रहा था, जो है एक चीज जो दलित की बात आती है, बेचारे दलित इतना पीछे रहे हैं और अभी भी जितना लोग कहते हैं कि वो आगे हैं, वो है नहीं। ये एक मास परसेप्शन फैला दिया गया है ताकि वो हिंदुत्व फोल्ड में आ जाए, जो है उसको पॉलिटिकली किया गया है, जिसके वो शिकार हुए भी हैं। वो इतना आगे बेचारे नहीं गए हैं जितना कि लोगों ने उसको बताया है, जो है दे नीड अ लॉट मोर वर्क।
सही बात है। लेकिन बात,
मैं देहात से आता हूं, मैं जानता हूं, मेरे मोहल्ले के अगल बगल बहुत से दलित हैं, मैं देखता हूं उनकी क्या पोजीशन है, जो है। तो ये मैं कहना चाह रहा हूं, ये पॉलिटिकल वो है।
सही आप कह रहे हैं, मैंने भी यही देखा है, और ये कोई छिपी बात नहीं है। बस इतना फर्क ये है कि उनको रिजर्वेशन के थ्रू में थोड़ी बहुत चीजें मिली हैं, लेकिन सोशल स्ट्रक्चर ऐसा रखा गया कंट्री में कि अभी उनके पास बहुत से ऐसी चीजें नहीं। आप तो दूसरी फूटिंग पे थे ना, हमारा मसला दूसरा है। आपकी फूटिंग वो नहीं थी, लेकिन आप रिवर्स गियर में गए। ये मसला है कि हमारी फूटिंग तो दलित वाली नहीं थी। अब तो ठीक है, पार्टीशन का थोड़ा इफेक्ट पड़ा, लेकिन ऐसा भी नहीं पड़ा था। आप देखिए, साउथ इंडिया अनटच था, सेंट्रल इंडिया अनटच था, वेस्टर्न इंडिया अनटच था, लेकिन हम रियली रिग्रेसिव उसमें गए हैं वक्त के साथ। बजाय इसके कि हम प्रोग्रेस आगे करते, वी हैव टर्न बैक टू द अदर साइड, और डिफेंसिव कंटिन्यूअस है रादर देन बीइंग एनालिटिकल। वी गेट डिफेंसिव इंस्टेंटली कि ये नहीं होता, वो नहीं करते, आप लोग क्या जाने। वी नेवर गो एनालिटिकली।
एनालिटिकली मैं आपको बताऊं कि मैं तकरीबन 10-12 हज़ार पेजेस कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली के डिबेट्स पढ़ रहा था कि उसमें जब इंसेंटिव्स की या अफर्मेटिव एक्शन की बात हो रही थी, और उसमें मैं पा रहा था कि बेगम एजाज रसूल, तजम्मुल हुसैन खान वही बातें कर रहे थे जो आप अभी कर रहे हैं रवि भाई, कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली डिबेट में।
मेरे ख्याल से इसको खत्म किया जाए भाई।
डॉक्टर अंबेडकर जो एक बहुत ही ऑर्गेनिक थिंकर थे, डॉक्टर अंबेडकर के इंटरवेंशन हर इंपॉर्टेंट मौके पे देखिएगा, उसमें क्या नाम है कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली डिबेट में इतने अच्छा इंटरवेंशन, इतना इन्फॉर्म्ड इंटरवेंशन जब एक ऑर्गेनिक इंटेलेक्चुअल या ऑर्गेनिक लीडर जैसे फाइट करता है। और ऑन ऑल इंपॉर्टेंट ओकेजन, जिसके बारे में प्रोफेसर अब्बास अंसारी साहब का कमेंट मुझे याद आता है कि ऑन ऑल इंपॉर्टेंट ओकेजन्स इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली ऑफ इंडिया, these leaders, our own leaders, they maintained their criminal silence, or the speeches that they were delivering, they were not relevant. देखिए, जब देने की बात होती है, आज अगर किसी भी डिस्ट्रिक्ट में चले जाइए, हमारे फॉर्मर अनटचेबल जो हमारे जैसे लोग हैं, हमारे दलित यानी SC ST के लोग, ये थैंक्स टू दैट इंटरवेंशन ऑफ डॉक्टर अंबेडकर कि आज किसी भी डिस्ट्रिक्ट में चले जाइए, डिस्पाइट अनटचेबिलिटी 25% कम से कम आपको जॉब्स मिल जाएंगे, कम से कम 25% हर डिस्ट्रिक्ट में मिल जाएंगे। क्यों मिल जाएगा?
भाई यार आप, मैं मोहित साहब एक बात वाकई नहीं समझ पा रहा हूँ कि वो जो रुद्रांशु ने कहा कि हम लोग स्पेस को ब्रॉड नहीं कर पाते क्या, वो तो तय हो गया ना मेरे भाई, आप तो पॉलिटिकल साइंस के प्रोफेसर हैं, वो तो तय हो गया कि मुस्लिम्स कैटेगराइज किए गए जिस भी वजह से, हिस्टोरिकल ब्लंडर हुआ, जो भी हुआ, वो रिजर्वेशन में नहीं है। ये बात क्यों नहीं आप समझ रहे कि वो रिजर्वेशन में नहीं है? तो जब नहीं है तो उनको पैरिटी में कि जो रिजर्वेशन से उसे मत रखिए, आपकी कंडीशन दूसरी है। अब इस दूसरी कंडीशन में क्यों नहीं वही दिमाग जो आप लगा रहे हैं अंबेडकर साहब तक जाने का, उस दिमाग से क्यों नहीं आप ओपन हो के ये बात,
आप तो मेरी बात नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं, तो मैं कह रहा हूँ इस बात की वजह से।
अरे आप,
मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि इन डेमोक्रेटिक सोसाइटी सॉल्यूशन ऑफ एवरी प्रॉब्लम इज पॉलिटिकल।
नो इट इज नॉट।
नो सर, इट इज सर। हम लोग नहीं, इट इज
ठीक है, तो मुस्लिम्स को इस चीज से भी निकलना
पॉलिटिकल
होगा।
अवेयरनेस सर, हम लोगों का डेडिकेशन, आप सोचिए आपके यहाँ दिन है, आप बैठे हैं, रात के 12 बज गए, लेकिन फिर भी हम डटे हुए हैं।
अरे वो
डेडिकेशन की कमी नहीं है,
थैंक यू,
डेडिकेशन की कमी नहीं है सर हम लोगों में।
वेल सेड, वेल सेड,
थैंक यू, वेल सेड भाई, ये लाइटर नोट यही था, सही में।
मगर
हम फ्रंट लाइन वर्कर हैं सर, हम यहाँ पे गोली खाते हुए
भाई तो कह रहे हैं कि थैंक्स फॉर योर डेडिकेशन।
वैसे राशि साहब, एक बात हम कहना चाहेंगे, प्रोफेसर साहब भी यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं, इनके कमरे में ही AMU में बैठे हुए एक डिस्कशन चल रहा था हम लोगों का, और उसमें हमने उस वक्त 2012 की बात होगी, हमने कहा कि एक नारा दिया जाए, जय भीम जय मीम, जय मीम जय भीम। वो नारे का इतना एतराज हुआ, लेकिन जब ओवैसी साहब देते हैं तब वो एक्सेप्टेबल है, लेकिन अगर दलित देता है तो नहीं है। तो को सफरर कहाँ बन रहे?
भाई वही तो बिल्कुल आपने सही कहा, वही सही कहा।
दलित भीम साहब, हम लोग तो, हम और आप तो उस नारे के साथ ही आगे बढ़े थे।
सर आपको
नहीं, ये बात आप सही कह रहे हैं।
वैसे आपने हाईजैक कर लिया।
वैसे मैडम फातिमा, हम लोग भी बगैर लंच के ही डटे हुए हैं।
तो ऐसा नहीं कि आप ही डेडिकेटेड हैं।
कहाँ 1:30 बजे हैं, हम लोग लंच अभी नहीं खाए हैं आपकी वजह से।
सर यहाँ हम आपको बताएं, हम अपने ऑफिस में अगर किसी दिन बहस करके आते हैं ना, तो शाम में आकर के डर जाते हैं कि कहीं ईमेल ना आ जाए कि योर सर्विसेज आर नो मोर रिक्वायर्ड।
अच्छा,
और हुआ है, ऐसा हुआ है सर हमारे यहाँ।
ओके, ठीक है।
हमारे यहाँ एक इंसान की प्राइवेट सेक्टर में नौकरी गई है क्योंकि उसने जो है लिख दिया था कि चेहल्लुम की छुट्टी क्यों नहीं हुई। He was I mean very capable person।
अरे भाई, तो प्राइवेट सेक्टर है, वो कुछ भी कर सकता है, उसके लिए आप क्या कीजिएगा?
प्राइवेट सेक्टर की उसने तो उसने गवर्नमेंट को लिख दी। मतलब आप ये सोचिए कि हम लोग इस पर भी, इस तमाम अपने ऊपर डेंजर ले करके भी हम लोग काम करते हैं, बहस करते हैं, लोगों से जाते हैं ग्रास रूट। सर मेरी भी सोच वही थी जो आपकी है, जब तक मैं ग्रास रूट से मिली नहीं थी। प्रॉब्लम तो हम लोग ड्राइंग रूम डिस्कशन वाले हैं, प्रॉब्लम ग्रासरूट वाले तो हैं
ये
ही।
बताइए, आप जो बार बार ये लाती हैं तो वो लाइटर में हम लोग जा ही नहीं पाते। आप बहुत सीरियस होकर के आप देखिए, आप कंटिन्यूअस आप एक्यूजेशन वाले बोर्ड में आती हैं कि हम जो करते हैं वो सही कर रहे हैं, आप लोग तो ड्राइंग रूम वाले हैं। आपको कैसे मालूम?
आप नहीं, हम लोग आप लोग नहीं, हम लोग, मैं आई इंक्लूड माई सेल्फ इन दैट।
क्यों ड्राइंग रूम वाले हैं? क्यों ड्राइंग रूम वाले हैं?
क्योंकि हमें नहीं पता, हम लोग बहुत सारी चीजें प्री कंसीव नोशन से समझते हैं, विच इज नॉट द रियलिटी।
ये आपकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग होगी ना, क्यों आप सबको इंक्लूड इसमें कर रहे हैं? ये क्यों आप कह रहे हैं कि सारे लोग यहाँ जो बैठे हैं ड्राइंग रूम डिस्कशन वाले लोग हैं? आपको कैसे मालूम कि ये लोग क्या क्या करते होंगे?
सर, ये जो बात हम कह रहे हैं ना, हम जब कोई बात कही जाती है तो वो सिंबॉलिक कही जाती है, वो आपको नहीं कही जा रही है।
नहीं,
सिंबॉलिक
आप नहीं समझ रही। मेरे कहने मतलब आप मुझको नहीं कह रहे, लेकिन आपको जब ये वर्ड कहती हैं तो आपको कैसे मालूम कि इस पे जो 90 लोग थे, 100 लोग बैठे थे, इसमें कौन लोग क्या क्या करते रहे होंगे या कितनी चीजों में इन्वॉल्व है?
तो फिर आपको भी नहीं मालूम ना, आप भी तो वहां बैठ के कह रहे हैं कि यहाँ नहीं करते हम लोग।
मुझको इसलिए मालूम है कि मैं ये फोरम चला रहा हूँ, तो इस पे जितने लोग थे ऑलमोस्ट सभी को मैं जानता हूँ कि कौन लोग हैं। ये फर्क था मेरे और आप में। मुझे मालूम है
हम जानते हैं आपको, रजी भाई हम जानते हैं आपको, आपका इन्वॉल्वमेंट भी जो यहाँ पे है।
ये फर्क मैं बता रहा हूँ उन साहबा को कि हमको इसलिए मालूम है कि अगर वो 400 को हम ही लिस्ट भेजते कि वो कौन लोग हैं, कहाँ इन्वॉल्व हैं, कितना लैग करता है और क्या करना है, तो ऐसे ही नहीं ये 1:30 बजे भूखे फजल भाई बैठे हुए हैं, हम भी भूखे बैठे हुए, और ये अभी उठेंगे, अगले हफ्ते की तैयारी करेंगे। तो डेडिकेशन तो है,
फूड फॉर थॉट भी तो है यहाँ पे।
नहीं, फूड फॉर थॉट ही नहीं। और ये भी बता दे कि ये एक बात हम बता रहे हैं आपको, ये सही है, जितना ओवरसीज में आकर के इंडियंस, जब वो जिस कम्युनिटी का है, वो इंडिया के लिए काम करता है, पैसा जमा करने में, उसके लिए लॉबी करने में, वो जब वो वापस जाता तो उसे शॉक लगता कि यार उसी के रिलेटिव्स के कजिन्स ये तो खाली ठाट की लाइफ कर रहे हैं, इन्हें किसी चीज में इन्वॉल्वमेंट ही नहीं है इनका। That's what
मैं एग्री करती हूँ
Absolutely right, Razi bhai. Absolutely right.
I mean, I really get shocked. और ये नहीं बात है, मैं देखिए मैं आजमगढ़ से बिलोंग करता हूँ, आजमगढ़ से लेके अलीगढ़ दिल्ली का मेरा एक ही रूट रहा है 40 साल से। एवरी चीज मैं जानता हूँ, डेली बेसिस पे मैं एंगेजमेंट मेरा है, मुझे मालूम है कि कितने लोग वहाँ क्या करते हैं उसमें, और यहाँ पे क्या करते हैं, और क्यों यहाँ पे इतना वो अननेसेसरी। अब कोई कहे कि हम तो बड़े ठाट से रह सकते हैं, हमें क्या पड़ी हुई यार, हम तो अब सिटीजन भी नहीं, आराम से कर रहे, क्या सब तमाशा किए हुए। वाई वी आर डूइंग ऑल दैट? ये कोई बैठ के मजा लेना है तो हम यहीं पे मजा ना ले लें, आप लोगों के साथ क्या मजा लेना? तो दैट लॉजिक डजंट फिट। वी आर वेरी एक्टिविस्ट हियर, ऑल एनआरआईज, मोस्ट ऑफ देम जो एक्टिविस्ट हैं वो बहुत इंगेज है, और सब इंडिया की गियर्ड है, सब इंडिया के ऊपर।
रुद्रांशु की जो प्रॉब्लम है उसके लिए मैं दुआ कर दीजिए कि रुद्रांशु की 2 प्रॉब्लम है वो दोनों खत्म हो जाए जल्द से जल्द।
This is the difference. I did my LLM from Canada. तो मैं भी पहले हार्ड जो राइट विंग विचारधारा है उसको बड़ा पसंद तो नहीं करता था, लेकिन एक्सेप्ट करता था। उस राइट विंग थिंकिंग को चैलेंज करने की जो कुव्वत मेरे अंदर आई, वो कनाडा से LLM करने के बाद ही आई। वो हिंदुस्तान में पढ़ के नहीं आ पा रही।
सर लेकिन है ना, एक बात समझिए,
कोई तो बात होगी ना कि हमारे फ्रीडम मूवमेंट को विदेश में पढ़े हुए लोगों ने ही क्यों लीड किया।
अरे भाई, तो ये दिलीप साहब बैठे हुए हैं, वो दिलीप साहब आपकी बात नहीं मानेंगे। दिलीप साहब तो वहीं की प्रोडक्ट हैं, वो तो वहां पे भी लिबरल हैं।
तो और मुस्लिम्स को ये समझना भी छोड़ना होगा कि डिस्क्रिमिनेशन या खतरा खाली उन्हीं के ऊपर है। मैंने अभी चैट बॉक्स में एक पूरा राइट अप जो मैंने खुद लिखा है, छोटा सा एक पैराग्राफ, वो प्रोफेसर साहब को भेजा भी है। इवन द जाट्स आर बिकमिंग पावरलेस, सिस्टमैटिकली दे हैव बीन मेड पावरलेस बाय द बीजेपी। The state of Haryana, which always used to have a Jat chief minister, no longer has a Jat chief minister. There is no Jat cabinet minister.
आप कहाँ से कहाँ लेके जा रहे हैं डिस्कशन को? आप बहुत कहाँ से कहाँ डिस्कशन ले जा रहे हैं? बात जो हो रही है उस पर फोकस रखिए।
अरे भाई, तो ये क्या कह रही हैं आप? क्यों आ गई बीच में इंटरव्यू करने? क्या कहना चाहती हैं आप?
डिस्कशन को
कहना
मैं कहीं
चाहते
नहीं
हैं
ले
कि
जा रहा
तुमने
हूँ,
जो बात
डिस्कशन को
कही है वो ये
नहीं,
है
प्लीज
कि हमें
प्लीज हियर मी आउट,
अपनी मदद आप करनी चाहिए।
देखिए ये बात सही है।
प्लीज हियर मी आउट। ऑल आई वांट
सिंह
जैसे
साहब,
आपने
सिंह
बार
साहब,
बार इस
सिंह
चीज को
साहब,
कहा
एक बात
कि
समझिए।
हमें खुद करनी चाहिए।
all I wanted to say is right wing ideology is based on bigotry and it has to create division.
Yeah, no doubt about it, no doubt about it.
At the moment it is creating division between
बिल्कुल,
Hindus and the
होगी बात,
Muslims.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल मानते हैं।
जब ये किस्सा सेटल हो जाएगा तो वो चैप्टर नंबर 2 शुरू होगा, वो होगा दलित वर्सेस सवर्ण, फिर चैप्टर नंबर 3 कुछ और आएगा।
Chapter 1 is near completion, sir. I tell you, it is near completion.
वो रुकती नहीं है कहीं भी। And chapter number 4 will be capitalists versus the poor people. ये जो इलेक्शन हुआ है
ये लाइट
इसमें
नोट पे नहीं जा रहा है, लाइट नोट पे बिल्कुल नहीं जा रहा है, मुस्तकिल सीरियस नोट की तरफ वापस आ रहे हैं लोग। तो
देखिए सिंह साहब, मुद्दे की जो बात है, मुद्दे की बात यह है सिंह साहब, मैं प्लीज समझिए, मुद्दे की बात यह है कि आज सिचुएशन ये है, राइट और लेफ्ट की बात नहीं आ रही, आज सिचुएशन आ रही है कि संविधान को कैसे बचाया जाए, बात वहां पर आ रही है। समझे, मुद्दा वो है असली, और वो जो है उसको मुस्लिम और दलित समाज मिलकर ही बचा सकता है, और कोई नहीं बचाएगा। ये भी समझ लीजिए इस बात को। जो सिंह साहब पोखर में स्विमिंग सीखता है, उसे पता है पोखर क्या है।
जी
ये बात तो है।
और उसके लिए
ये बात बड़ी ऊंची,
और उसके लिए पार्टी सिस्टम भी चाहिए सर।
अरे भाई उसमें भैंस भी डाल दीजिए। देखिए आप लोग
पार्टी सिस्टम चाहिए।
अरे भाई प्लीज लाइट हो जाइए, इतना हेवी क्यों लेते हैं अपने सर पे, कुछ देर के लिए लाइट हो जाइए। मैं ये कह रहा था दिलीप साहब की पोखरे में 2-4 भैंस भी डाल दीजिए और देखिए कि उसमें भैंस के रहते हुए आप कैसे तैरते हैं। रियली भैंस से टकरा गए तो क्या होगा, अगर आप सोचिए कि पोखरे में भैंस से अगर आप टकरा गए तो कैसे क्या होगा।
वो भैंस के ऊपर भी हम कैनाल में बैठे हैं, लेकिन अब जितने भैंस और भैंसे हैं वो सारे जो है उसमें घूम रहे हैं, फार्म्स में।
तो ये देखिए ये
घूम रहे हैं तो वो मिल ही नहीं रहे अब।
ये इश्यू बहुत सही है। आप सोचिए कि पोखरे में भैंस का होना भी जरूरी है और तैरना भी जरूरी है, कैसे होगा ये।
नहीं, ऑन द लाइटर नोट आई वुड से, यू नो राजी साहब, ऑन द लाइटर नोट आई वुड से कि देखिए जो एफ्लुएंट लोग हैं दोनों कम्युनिटीज में, अगर वो ये सोच लें 2-2, 4-4 बच्चों को हम ये रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ले लें कि उनको एजुकेट करें, उनको रिस्पॉन्सिबल बनाएं और उनको हर चीज से अवगत करवाएं
जी,
तो बहुत बड़ा हम समाज के लिए काम कर सकते हैं।
नो डाउट अबाउट इट। दिस इज व्हाट द एंड में आपने बहुत सही बात की और ये सबको समझ है, लेकिन लोग करते नहीं। प्रॉब्लम यही है, सब जानते हैं ये करना चाहिए। तो दिलीप साहब आपकी ईमेल तो मेरे पास होगी, आई एम श्योर।
मैंने आपको एक मैसेज भी भेजा था।
कब?
और वो मैसेज यही था जो हमने प्रोफेसर साहब को भी भेजा था कि हमें क्या चाहिए, हिंदू राष्ट्र चाहिए या बहुजन राष्ट्र चाहिए। डू वी वांट अ राइटस नेशन और वी वांट अ मेजोरिटेरियन नेशन।
तो प्रोफेसर साहब तो कुछ नहीं बोले होंगे, हमने भी कुछ नहीं कहा।
नहीं प्रोफेसर साहब बोलते हैं, लेकिन वो मैं ये सोच रहा था वो आज के फोरम में बोलेंगे कुछ।
अरे भाई वो बहुत सीरियस बात फिर हो जाएगी, आप लाइटर ही पे रहने दीजिए। वो फिर
नहीं, वो लाइट तो एजुकेशन की कर ही ली ना बात, हमने पोखर की भी कर ली लाइट।
नहीं, पोखर में जब भैंस पोखर में इंटर हुई है वही लाइटर मूवमेंट था, आई थिंक। चलिए भाई हो गया, अब थक गए रियली। थैंक यू। अगले हफ्ते के लिए आइए, अगले हफ्ते कुछ और फिर बातें होंगी। दिलीप साहब शामिल होइएगा।
जी बिल्कुल, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। अल्लाह हाफिज, ऑल द बेस्ट।
अच्छा डिस्कशन,
हैव अ नाइस लंच सर।
अच्छा लंच अब बचा कहा है, कुछ होगा तो खा लेंगे। चले
प्रोफेसर साहब आदाब।
वैसे रजी वो जो आपने पैम्फलेट ब्रोश्योर इसमें दिखाया था जिसमें स्पीकर्स की तस्वीर थी और आपकी भी थी, आपकी तस्वीर बड़ी अकड़ी हुई थी जो है वो उसको जरा सा आप ढीला कर दें जो है।
तो वो अकड़ जब थी तब थी, अब थोड़ी रहेगी, अब तो ढीले हो गए भाई। वो आज से हमारे पास अपनी तस्वीर ही नहीं रहती है, जो 15 साल 10 साल पुरानी थी तो वो लगा दी कि भाई डाई अब भी लगाते तब भी लगाते थे, फर्क असली रंग तो हमारा देखा नहीं किसी ने। तो
चलो इसी लाइटर नोट के साथ अब खत्म करते हैं।
तो वो हाँ अकड़ तो अब कहाँ रह गई, अब खत्म हो गई।
तो शादी से पहले की तस्वीर थी
राजीव
इसका
साहब,
मतलब।
आपकी बातों में बहुत दम है, दम तो
बहुत
अभी
दम
भी
है।
बहुत है।
आप अच्छा, आप जब घर जाइएगा तो सोचिएगा कि भाई पोखरे तक तो आप आए, लेकिन भैंस हमने डाली थी पोखरे में।
गंदी है आजकल तो सर,
बिल्कुल
भैंस
सही
का
कहा
है।
आपने, बिल्कुल सही कहा।
अच्छा भाई, थैंक यू ऑल, थैंक यू, फिर मिलेंगे।
ओके, खुदा हाफिज।
Good.
Thank